And welcome back from another great center stage session. We are going to keep the CX conversation going in just a moment. Before we do, though, we're going to take it straight out to the show floor where Rob is hanging out in the DevNet zone to talk about all the latest and greatest in XDR. Rob, how's it going, my friend?
Oh my gosh, could it be any better? I don't think so. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Always learning new stuff here in the DevNet zone. Steve Hall, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
As we were kind of setting this up earlier, you've got a couple of different demos to walk us through. The theme being, though, really very common and with all of us today is so much data, so little time, human brain, it's getting hard to kind of keep up, but you've got answers for us. Is that a decent way to set it up?
Absolutely, and more importantly, answers for our customers. So we're talking two outcomes here. So what we want to do is show services and how services enable using AI for our customers to consume our products faster and be able to do it with better quality and less human error. So the first case that we're going to walk through is with Cisco XDR, our security platform. And what we're going to do here is we're going to integrate a large language model into the automated workflow. So when a security threat comes in, the large language model is actually going to use generative AI to troubleshoot across the whole life cycle of the security incident. Let's take a look at it. So what you see here is an incident coming into our XDR platform. Umbrella has detected a threat. The large language model is analyzing the threat from that, and it's taking a look at all of the details in that alert. It's crafting an action plan on how it needs to troubleshoot and investigate the security threat. Look at this beautiful incident update that it's putting into the system. It's giving context around what it's analyzing, what it needs to go do next, and then it's building its next action plan. Still, generative AI at the helm here, taking a look at what the next steps need to be. It's recommending an action plan now, so it's determining what our next steps need to be. At this point, now it's going to generate a change request. And we all know, nobody likes to generate change requests, right? And so it's generating the request for us. So here we're asking for approval, and now a human would go in, analyze what generative AI in our AI assistant has recommended that we do to take this risk off of the network. A human's then going to go in, click approve. It's now back to the AI assistant to then finish it up, build the execution for taking this node off the network, and then isolate that host so there's no threat to the business. So across that whole life cycle, seeing generative AI taking it from threat detection all the way through execution and remediation of that threat to protect your business.
Oh, that's awesome. And am I saying it correctly? It's agentic because you've got actual action being taken. I like the fact that it fills out the ticket for you.
Yes, yeah, it's agentic under the hood. There's actually 3 agents virtually that work with each other to create that outcome.
That is very cool.
Yes.
Okay, what else you got?
All right, so our next scenario. So now we're talking infrastructure as code, specifically our services for services as code. And what this is using code principles like we develop software for to manage configuration for networks. So what we want to do here is we want to reduce the simplicity of how we configure networks, and we want to also build intelligence into that too, so that we reduce our human error and we can execute change faster. So we're going to talk through 3 use cases here. The first use case, and so all of this wraps around an AI assistant. And the first use case is understanding configuration. So let's take a look at that. So we've got a natural language prompt, and Cisco AI Assistant understands how to configure ACI. Now, maybe I don't know ACI, and I don't know what's configured, but it knows the state of my configuration. So it's telling me, oh, you've got a production tenant in this instance. You've got some fabric policies. So now I'm informed of what the current state of my network is and what that configuration is. So that's pretty cool, but what if I want to make a configuration change? I can ask it to generate a configuration change for me by describing the intent of what I want to have happen. So let's say I need to configure a subnet on each of the bridge domains in this configuration. It'll generate the configuration for me because it understands how to do configuration. So it's going to generate the configuration, and I can take that configuration, copy it, and paste it in my execution engine to deploy that change. So reducing the complexity of what I need to know in order to administer my network and being able to do it faster.
Yeah.
The final use case we have, what if I push this change out and something goes wrong? You can see here there's an error message on the screen. I, by accident, asked for a duplicate ID of a VLAN, and as a result, it didn't execute the change. I can ask the assistant, what's wrong? Copy paste that error in, it identifies the error in the logical error in my change, and it's recommending a correction to the change. I can now copy the corrected configuration, go put it in, execute that change, and then I'm done with my change request. So really reducing the complexity of how our customers manage their networks and use our products.
I feel like you've taken it to another level, but you still left a little human in the middle to make sure that there's some responsibility
yes.
and some clarification there. Steve, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Guys, we'll go back to the studio.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Rob. Thanks, Steve Hall. Great demo. We appreciate you walking us through that and everything that you guys are doing out there. Keep bringing us those great stories. All right, as promised, we are going to continue the conversation from the last center stage, dig a bit deeper into CX and really hone in on services as code in particular, because this lets us automate network management for faster implementation, faster deployment. And in order to bring us those insights, I'm going to turn this way. I've got Michael Kemper with me, CTO of CX EMEA. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much.
So glad to have you here. Thank you. And back on set from your prior conversation with Alpha across the way, I've got Jesse Reed, our VP of CX Product Management. Jesse, I'm so glad you had time to do this again today.
Great to be here.
All right, so thanks for hanging out with us on the broadcast. Let's dive in here. Let's talk services as code just to kind of kick things off. And Michael, I'll start with you. Automation is just so much more critical right now in today's AI era, right? If we are going to overcome all of this complexity in network management, all these hurdles in deployment. So why don't you give us a little example of what Cisco is doing to leverage automation to address these kinds of customer challenges?
Yeah, so what we've been doing is we've developed service as code to make things much easier and much more robust, because you cannot have in the implementation phase of those sorts of changes, you cannot have the human interface still being the essential one. So you have to take things into a digital way, and if you do that, you're going to come down from weeks and months to minutes of change times with much higher success. What we are seeing in real life is a kind of at least 5 to 10 times faster than you usually would have been, and you are going to get to 100% success rate, which is even more successful. Because I think all of us have been sitting in maintenance windows in the past where things got horribly wrong, and then even your rollback capabilities didn't work. We've eliminated all of this with service as code to make it much more robust for customers, and do that all across many architectures, which is a real game changer for AI.
All right, so I'm smiling here because I'm going to ask that question that I know so many of our viewers are watching. They hear these statistics of how much more rapidly we can do it, and they say, yeah, sure. It's a great idea. Thank you so much, Cisco, for making that promise to us. We can really do it, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's happening, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So our promise is 100% change success 5 times faster.
Yeah.
And you heard Steve go through the demo of how it all works. Mm-hmm. But what we really have to do is take a step back and understand, why do changes fail, right? So often we point to human error as the condition. But let's face it, we're all imperfect. We are human. And by the way, AI is imperfect too.
Yeah.
So we really need to get to the root causes of why change fails. The first is state, and more specifically, configuration state. Most of our customers don't know the actual configurations running on their boxes at any given point in time. Nevertheless, the collection of those configurations and what it should be yielding in terms of functionality in the environment. That's factor number one. Second factor is what I like to refer to as first of, or first of its kind. So often, the people that go into a change are doing something that they've never done before. But it isn't the first time it's been done in the industry. It's actually been done many times over. But those people doing that change don't have access to that wisdom and experience that came before them. And then the third is, as Michael was describing, humans are linking the process. They're kind of connecting the dots. We need it to be a digital workflow that ties it all together. So as Steve was taking you through the AI interface into the solution, what he was showing you was infrastructure as code. It's not new. It's taking a software discipline, right? The way we manage software. We fork a version of software. We make changes to it. We test it. We validate it. We're taking that same approach to configuration. And we're adding all of Cisco's experience, knowledge, and best practices into that model that prevents our customers from doing things that won't work or cause harm in their environment. And then we tie the whole solution together with business process and analytics, where you can see the end user experience, you can see the application performance, and know whether your network is yielding the end state that's expected.
All right, so let me tug at that thread just a little bit longer, right? Because again, I always like to put myself into the mindset of the customer. And one thing that we know is we don't know what we don't know. We always assume, now I've got a much better grasp on everything than I actually do, even if somebody feels a bit in the weeds about it. So as we try to get out there and let them know, we are here for you, we want to partner with you, we want to help you, we want to support you, what is the story that we can tell our customers that says, You don't know what you don't know, but we do, because it's been done before. We have the experience to get you where you need to go. How do we get that out to them?
So what we've been doing is, this methodology was developed together with customers, and we meanwhile have that live with more than 50 customers globally. And if you look into the interesting environment, seeing ourselves as customer, when we did certain changes a while ago, we saw that we had exactly the problems which Jesse just outlined. And when we looked into our WebEx environment, we've been able to do this internally with 70% higher productivity rate and 100% success. And that success piece is absolutely essential. And if you look into getting traceability, because if you use controllers, you are using controllers and you do implementations and you do not really have a trace back of who did what by when. With our methodology, you're going to have 100% traceback of everything you've been doing, and in case something went wrong, you're able to go one step back and you're back at the beginning. And 70% productivity increase for WebEx, which is running globally in many data centers, is a huge step ahead.
And it's an easy story to tell and for people to understand. We're about 1:45. I want to take just about 30 seconds to wrap it up on this. Automation is such a big efficiency booster, productivity booster as well. How does services as code help to address that? What's coming next for that?
The numbers don't lie, right? Mike was talking about his experience. Overall, in day one implementation, we're seeing 40% improvement in efficiency. That's significant. In day two, if you employ this methodology, it can reach upwards of 90% improvement.
Wow.
So what we're doing is rolling this out across all of Cisco's architectures. And very soon, in the next few months, you're going to have it across the entire portfolio. And we're tying it all together, making it seamless experience for managing and operating the technology and make sure that it delivers the services that the end customers rely on.
Fantastic, fantastic. Jesse, Michael, thank you so much for joining us here in the studio. Really appreciate your time. Great talk from center stage and everything you're doing here at the show, so well done. Stay with me. We're going to announce the next segment right now. We're going to head into our next center stage session. That is kicking off here at 2:15 Central European Time, about 45 seconds from now. We're going to look at building a resilient future. The different stages in observability excellence. Mike Cohen, Steve Moore, Laura Marie Vetter are here with us to lead out that session. We're going to discover what the future observability really looks like. They're going to dive into what they call the 4 key stages that are really essential to building out a leading observability practice. They're also going to talk about the ways we can incorporate AI in the right way to be able to create maximum impact. And then we'll look at Splunk observability and the way it's being used right now. That is supercharged by App Dynamics. So let's head out to center stage right now. We're going to hear those stories for ourselves, and we'll meet you right back here on the other side. Away we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Cohen, Senior Director of Product Management for Splunk Observability at Cisco. And we're going to be speaking today about building a resilient future. The stages of observability excellence. So let's start by thinking about a single button click in an application you operate. Now your users see something very simple. They click a button, what they expect to happen happens. We actually know it's far more complex. There's an iceberg of technology that goes on behind the scenes to make that button do what our users expect it to do. But at the end of the day, it's not about the packets we processed or the transactions that were successfully completed or the metrics we collected to monitor all of that. It's about the bottom line. And that's what everyone here helps power. But also, since you're here, you know exactly how hard it is to do that. Technology stacks are increasingly complex, and errors actually cascade across these complex systems. And diagnosing issues in this environment is incredibly complicated, especially because systems are highly interconnected. Problems can be anywhere, and they can actually have a blast radius that spreads across the environment. I spoke recently with a customer that told me about a fiber cut in their environment. It cascaded through their network, affected all their applications, and ultimately impacted their business processes. How do you monitor and troubleshoot a problem that has that sort of impact across your business? It can be very complicated because the answers are actually buried across multiple observability tools that can actually be siloed and expensive to manage. So we at Splunk Observability now supercharged with app dynamics, actually help market-leading companies with their most complex tech stacks build a leading observability practice. We help them actually fix problems faster, get complete business visibility across their entire environment, and get and keep control of their data and manage costs. Now, we've worked with enough customers now, and that we have a very good understanding of industry standards, and we've seen customer adoption patterns. And that's helped us distill a number of common steps that our customers follow as they progress on an observability journey towards digital resilience. And ultimately, that's what I wanted to talk about today. This journey begins with foundational visibility, and that means visibility across the entire footprint of your environment, where you actually get a baseline for your applications and infrastructure with logs and metrics together. Now, Splunk's an excellent tool here because it actually brings all that data together in one place, in a unified data platform. So you've got a central point of management, control flow, and compliance for that monitoring. So when something goes wrong, you actually have the information at your fingertips, organized, correlated, and structured so that you can troubleshoot those applications and ultimately get to the root cause of what's going on. The challenge that occurs as users progress past that stage in the journey is actually an explosion of data. They often find that they've gotten too good at collecting data and telemetry about their environment, and it's no longer efficient to collect, store, and manage it. Large swaths of data may actually be unused, and just be costing the enterprise money. In other cases, important data actually got archived and is no longer accessible when you need it to solve a problem. You need to get to the point where you're not just collecting data, but you're actually optimizing the telemetry that you ingest. Now, that can include routing data based on its value to your organization, putting high-value data in a real-time tier so you can access it instantly when you need it, and lower, less time-sensitive data into an archive tier where it can be restored if you need to access it. It can include filtering out unwanted data from your environment, but also transforming data, say from logs into metrics, so you can store it in an efficient manner and do things like real-time alerting. Now, again, Splunk has tools to help you here. We have native tools designed to help you manage a data pipeline and optimize the metrics, logs, and traces that are ingested, but still make sure you can troubleshoot efficiently. Now, the next phase in this journey is actually prioritizing issues based on their business impact. Now, this actually means that you are able to understand how changes in the technology that you own and operate actually affect the underlying business metrics that you care about. Now, we all know how complex our IT systems can be. And it can be hard to correlate business goals back to the underlying IT system they rely on. But it's absolutely a critical thing to do. Without doing so, we're actually slower to identify the issues that actually most affect our business. And it can be difficult to actually prioritize them based on their business impact. But getting to this point actually requires that we monitor not just the health of our IT systems, which we're reasonably experienced in doing, but also start monitoring the business processes that they rely on. Things like the sales that we're completing, user engagement metrics, or user behavior. Achieving this actually aligns IT to the business because now we're all looking at the same set of metrics and the same outcomes. It helps us understand when an outage occurs, exactly what is the effect on our business and how do those IT systems rely upon it. It actually lets us focus on the problems that matter the most. So as different alerts come in, we understand which are really driving our business and affecting us in a critical manner, so we can fix them quickly. It also helps the business side understand the value of the IT systems we're operating, so we can direct investments appropriately. Now, the next leg in this journey is actually shifting from being reactive, solving problems as they emerge, to a proactive posture. We can actually get ahead of issues and get ahead of downtime, see warning signs, and actually prevent issues before they become full-on outages. Now, this requires us to measure and optimize the end user experience. Now, end user experience is also a complicated beast. It has hundreds of components. There's the front end and back end code we write. Some of it may be first and some third party. There's the infrastructure we own and operate. There's APIs, some managed by third-party SaaS providers, that are critical parts of our application. And of course, there's the network that's actually connecting our system together and bringing data where it needs to go. Now, each team that owns and operates each of these components tends to work independently and know mostly about their own domain. But as we get towards proactive response, we need to think holistically about the systems we manage and operate. We need to optimize performance of the application and infrastructure. Users really see the end-to-end performance of the app, and they look for fast applications. So we need to bring together performance data from every component in the experience so we can deliver the results that our users expect and really see the performance that they experience. We also need to understand the end user journey. Where do users abandon our application or workflow? Where might they leave a purchase unmade or give up on using a site that we've created? Rather than optimizing sections in isolation, we actually need to figure out what bottlenecks are holding our users back so we can focus on what matters and ultimately drive up the business metrics that are most critical. As you move through this part of the journey, you can actually shift from even just preventing problems and get to the point where you're actually driving forward business objectives. And you're actually able to prioritize development time, prioritize investments to the place that matter the most. Now, last but not least, the final leg in this journey is around unified workflows and standardizing observability practices across teams. Now, doing this can actually help you drive up developer productivity and ultimately increase the pace of innovation in your environment. It can also help your teams drive up collaboration with shared data and shared context, so it allows them to solve problems faster as they all look at the same environments and understand how to work together to solve problems. Now, getting here can also be a challenge. It starts with changes in technology and tooling, which helps unlock the potential of your teams and give them the tools they need to actually start working together. Observability is, of course, a critical part of this initiative and making sure that they have tools that enable collaboration. But that's not all that's required. There's also a large degree of cultural change required in this leg of the journey. You need to break down the silos that actually exist between teams so that they ultimately get to the point where they build, own, and operate pieces of their system. And they understand how to collaborate and have those pieces work together to accomplish what the business needs. The result here is actually an organization that can collaborate together and build some of the most critical business outcomes. Now, this story wouldn't be complete if I didn't speak a little bit about AI. Now, if you roll back a few years, it's quite a number of folks thought of AI and observability with skepticism at best, maybe snake oil at worst. But the world's changed and changed considerably. And AI is delivering real outcomes in observability, and it is a critical part of the path to digital resilience at this point. And there's a couple real outcomes we've seen in our customers using AI for observability. The first is just their ability to prevent outages and actually apply, understand a system that can adapt to changes, automatically baseline through adaptive thresholding, or apply anomaly detection to automatically understand changes in their environment without having to tune all of their detection. It also includes the ability to reduce noise and actually accelerate root cause analysis by aggregating similar events together and actually summarizing them into a smaller set of the most critical, actionable alerts that you need to take action on. And finally, the last outcome, and I think the one I think is most exciting, is the ability of AI to actually democratize data and knowledge across the organization. As these tools help you find and fix problems and actually drive investigations, show you the next step in a journey, they can actually take some of the knowledge and some of the tasks that were only done by the 1 or 2 people that are the most critical in your organization and bring that to the point where everyone in your organization can actually be on call and help you solve the thorniest problems and solve them very quickly. That's where AI is going, and that's what I think we're most excited about as it progresses in this journey. Now, at Cisco, we work with a lot of great partners, but I think one of the ones we're most excited about is Evolutio. Now, Evolutio works with some of the most complex enterprises in the world who need to observe, automate, and secure their applications. And I'm very excited to have with me today Laura Vetter, the co-founder and CTO of Evolutio.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Laura. Welcome. So, Laura, thank you for joining me today. Why don't you take a minute and just give everyone a quick introduction and tell us a little bit about Evolutio.
So Evolutio is really an observability-focused consultancy company, and we help organizations understand their goals for observability and then build people, processes, tooling that all bring that vision together.
Awesome. Well, so let's get into it. What are some of the common challenges, since you've worked with so many organizations, including a number of our customers, that you see as these enterprises try to achieve comprehensive observability?
So this kind of goes back to what are your goals? So some of the organizations we work with, they just have a problem with basic monitoring. They have a lot of tools sprawl, data spread out in various places. It's hard to pull an entire story together when you have an issue. So just basic monitoring is a lot of times where people need to start. Some other common concerns are if you have partial outages where maybe just a subset of your clients are impacted by an issue, it can be really hard to detect that. Sometimes that takes days or weeks for our clients to detect that. So we have some tried and true ways that you can quickly get after those concerns. And then also just managing cost. A lot of this data is high volume, high velocity. And if you do it, I would say some of the legacy techniques that are out there, it can get really expensive. And a lot of the clients we have, they want to take the cost out.
That's awesome. I guess since we're on the topic of cost, maybe I'll probe on that a bit and say, what have you seen be effective to manage costs within your customers?
So a couple things that you mentioned, logs to metrics. So a lot of people have done, maybe you have SNMP logs that you're using to monitor your network. Those, a lot of times, are very key ways to do monitoring, and people have invested a lot of time in setting those up. But there's a lot of newer techniques coming out in how you monitor networking, and Cisco's leading the way in some of those with the acquisition of Thousand Eyes several years ago, and other things that really makes it where logs to metrics will really reduce your cost footprint and be way more effective long-term in using anomalies to detect things. The other thing that is really key is data pipelining. So for observability data specifically, there is a lot of data, a lot of it is not high value, so you need a way that you put everything into archive, as you mentioned, but only the things that need to go to analytics actually go through an analytics engine. Very cool.
Thank you, Laura. One of the other topics I wanted to talk about for a minute is AI. I spoke a bit about AI. A lot of the talks on this stage are talking about AI as well. Maybe I wanted to start at the higher level and say, for all the customers you've worked with, how do you see them employing AI successfully, and where might they be doing it not as successfully and need to hold back?
I think a lot of us that work in the IT layer, we really are focused on our area of concern. But when I see companies that we work with approaching AI, they're really putting together an AI program, a lot of times driven by the board of directors, and they want to increase the velocity that they're bringing products to market, so they're embedding AI in those things. And they also want to just do a better job at using their people. So they're trying to take the toil out of, especially really, I would say, PDF and data intensive jobs where maybe you have a manual or you have to go through all of this data to even make a decision on your next action. So we're seeing a lot of companies, and I'll give it for instance. For instance, let's take insurance as an example. We have a client who is using AI for when an employee is injured and they make a workman's comp claim. So those workman's comp claims adjusters know, okay, I need to look at this file next, and then I need to call this provider, and I need to ask them this question. You can just imagine the amount of toil that's taken out of work when that happens, and it makes a company much more effective.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you seen a number of these AI projects have big impacts on the IT strategy that you've seen within your clients?
Yeah, so I feel like for observability specifically, there's a lot of AI already embedded in these tool sets where you can use anomaly detection, but a lot of our clients aren't really using that effectively. They're still relying quite heavily on thresholds. I think also for AI, you need a lot of standards in the way that you groom the data, put it into tool sets so that no matter how broad the tech landscape is, you're always looking at things the same way and using AI to do that. And I think a lot of our clients are moving in that direction, and it will have massive efficiency gains.
Yeah. So, what advice do you have for organizations that haven't yet adopted, AI techniques, even the sort of, preventative and ML-based ones, that might need to incorporate them in their environments? What advice would you have for folks that are very early parts of that journey?
So I think even in your area of concern, you need a strategy. So you need to say, if we want to get better much faster, we need to make where proactive visibility is top of mind. We're putting insights around like how is our business impacted by things, and you drive a standard process through all of those. So none of these are tools questions. A lot of people, when they go after these things, they immediately are like, let's talk to the vendors and see what they have to say. But it's really important that for your organization, you have a roadmap and a strategy apart from the vendors, so you really can align with vendors that are matching your internal roadmap.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I spoke a little bit about observability being, a practice, and you did as well. Do you have advice for organizations that are trying to standardize the observability practice part of this journey, right? Where they've actually gotten reasonably advanced, but they really need to modernize their processes as well, and they have very diverse teams.
Yeah, so I think I've mentioned tool sprawl, and it's such a big problem in organization, and it causes a lot of siloed data sets. So it's really important that you work to bring all that data together for correlation reasons and also just ease of workflows. Like everybody's running from the same sheet of music. Everybody can see the same things. And I think companies like Cisco that can pull in networking data into that equation, that's a key differentiator for your portfolio. And a reason why a lot of our clients are moving to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you seen any organizational pushback as you try to drive some of those transformations?
Yeah, there's just so much bespoke development. I talked about like SNMP logs, that's a bespoke development around networking. But every single application that we roll up on, they have a whole bespoke set of dashboards that they rely on, and it's like dealing with 1,000 snowflakes in an organization. So having a strategy where you drive standards that are from the top down, like we're going to understand the business impact of an issue, and then we're going to have a way that we drill down to the data that says, why is this happening, is 100% the way to do it. And if you don't do it that way, you will continue to have all this toil around bespoke development that is just, it's really a waste of toil.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One other area I wanted to speak for a few minutes about is, we've heard from companies, and you probably have as well, around concerns about vendor lock-in, particularly in the observability ecosystem. What advice do you have for them, and how should customers think about the risk of vendor lock-in and how to manage it?
So vendor lock-in is absolutely a real issue, and it really has not had a solution until probably in the past 5 years with the rise of open telemetry. And I know even for networking people, you're like, why is everybody talking about open telemetry? Why is that such a big deal? And it really is because it avoids vendor lock-in. So you want to be able to negotiate with vendors based on their features, their analytics, how they help you manage costs, how they partner with you on the roadmap. And you don't want to have to stay with somebody just because it's too difficult to move. So a lot of our clients are saying, even though we're a large enterprise and this is going to be a multi-year journey to get there. We're going to go OTel native, and one thing that's really exciting about Cisco's roadmap here is you guys are one of the only vendors that is supporting OTel native out of the box.
Yeah.
So that's something that for our clients is just a non-negotiable, and they're not going to work with somebody that doesn't do it, so it's important.
No, that's great to hear, and we're, obviously, you made a good point. We have been, highly committed to the open telemetry landscape and investing in it. Do you have any other advice as customers are thinking about open telemetry and how to choose a vendor around open telemetry? What is the most critical thing they should look for at a criteria?
Yeah, I think one of the things about open telemetry is it's extremely good for cloud applications. And when you're looking at cloud applications, there's a scaling issue that is really important, that you need to be able to use automated ways like infrastructure, monitoring as infrastructure as code, where your observability is really part of your data pipelines as you roll out new applications, and even the whole back-end layout of how you do these standard dashboarding techniques, standard alerting techniques. It's really important that you partner with vendors that really can help you automate it across the board. And so I think that's how you get away from the bespoke development. That's how you do it with a toil and cost footprint that makes a lot of sense for an organization. And we have a lot of organizations that are really investing in platform engineering. And what I mean by that is they are re-architecting their entire infrastructure so that they can quickly release new features, so that new applications roll out very fast. And if you want to do that, you need an observability strategy that can go that fast. So you need to partner with vendors that are really allowing you to automate everything.
Awesome. And I have one more question for you. I think at Splunk, we're super excited about integrating with Cisco. And I wanted to know, from the outside, what are you most excited about as seeing Splunk now become a Cisco company?
Hands down, network observability has been like a laggard to be brought into the fold. A lot of times the networking data is siloed. That makes it easy for people to obviously blame the network, but also it makes it hard to pull the entire story together, especially in the environments we have today where there's multiple clouds involved in a single transaction. Some of the data then passes on-prem and comes back out. There might be a third party involved like Equinix. So bringing network observability into the fold as a proper citizen is really important, and I think Cisco absolutely has the right tech stack to bring that all together, especially now that Splunk's part of the portfolio.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. I'm happy to hear you're excited. We're super excited as well. Laura, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. We love working with Evolutio. I'm sure we'll have lots of opportunities to continue to work together.
Thanks for having me.
So one of the things that we talked a lot about so far, you heard it from Laura, I mentioned it as I was speaking as well, is downtime. And I wanted to take a minute and actually just quantify the cost of downtime. We actually worked with a partner, Oxford Economics, to actually quantify the cost of downtime that organizations see. And what we found was, across the Global 2000 in 1 year, the cost of downtime was over $400 billion. That's $200 million per organization. This was spread across security incidents and IT incidents and outages. And that cost is spread over a number of things. There's the obvious cost, the lost revenue that can occur, which is an immediate financial impact. But there's other financial costs. There's regulatory, fines that occur. There's SLA penalties. There can be legal costs. There's a number of other places that you don't necessarily think of that are direct financial costs. There's also hidden costs that occur as part of downtime. There's impact to your organization. There's time spent recovering from an outage. There can be lost productivity. All of these things impact your organization in a number of ways that you may not immediately think about and you may not immediately measure. In fact, we found that organizations can actually expect an outage to cause a stock price drop of between 1% and 9%. And it can actually take months for that to recover. Ultimately, what this comes down to is companies need to prevent downtime. It's a business necessity. And we've actually been working with a number of customers that have had great success doing that. And I wanted to quickly tell you about a couple of them and walk you through their stories. So one of them is Travelport. So Travelport is, a a travel supplier that works with over 165 countries. They actually lacked a holistic view of their environment. Were overwhelmed by alerts. They had long detection times. They brought in Splunk Observability and actually had an assigned expert help them revamp their observability practices. They were able to reduce the mean time to detection by 75% and false positives by 95% using these tools. Another one, Rappi, is a Latin American global delivery service. They work with 250 cities across Latin America. They had legacy tools that couldn't handle the 300% surge in traffic they received during COVID. And they actually brought in Splunk Observability Cloud and Splunk Cloud, and they were able to reduce their mean time to resolution by 90%. And the last one I'll mention, Royal Caribbean. It's a cruise line I'm sure you know. They suffered downtime of over $1 million per hour. Imagine trying to explain that to a CIO when every hour you're incurring $1 million of cost. They needed real-time proactive insights across their applications and infrastructure. They brought in Cisco Splunk App Dynamics and ThousandEyes to help with this problem. And ultimately, they were able to reduce their mean time to resolution by 50%. Hopefully, this gives you an idea of how some of our customers are actually prioritizing digital resilience. And hopefully, it emphasizes that doing so, prioritizing digital resilience and going on this observability journey is more important than it ever was before. And more so, the tooling and capabilities are actually richer than they've ever been. So now is the time to think about your observability processes, make an investment, and working with Splunk to do this absolutely pays off. Thank you very much, everyone.
Welcome back to the Cisco TV broadcast studio. So glad to have all of you with us right here on the live stream. I'm Steve Moulter, coming to you from the World of Solutions here at the RAI in Amsterdam. We just saw the different ways that we can build a resilient future, those key stages in observability excellence. Mike Cohen, Steve Moore, Laura Marie Vetter, they shared the future of Splunk observability and the ways that you can build a leading observability practice to maximize AI. And of course, AI, the talk of the show. Everywhere you go. It started with the opening keynote yesterday morning, driving all the way across the world of solutions and into, I believe, every single one of our center stage sessions. Are you AI ready? Splunk observability is a big part of getting you there. It is also supercharged by App Dynamics to give you unparalleled visibility across even your most diverse tech environments. Remember to keep reaching out to us using hashtag Cisco Live EMEA and at Cisco Live EMEA on whatever social media platform you prefer and that you love. Send us your comments, your thoughts, your ideas, inspirations if you're taking screenshots or video, whatever it is that you're doing out there, wherever you are tuning into the broadcast, we want to see it. Our social media team is standing by waiting to hear from you and respond to you. We want to make you a part of this amazing event. In just a moment, Alpa is going to sit down with James Hodge, our General Vice President and Chief Strategic Advisor for EMEA. They're going to have a great conversation around Splunk, ITSI, and ThousandEyes. But before we do that, we're going to head out into the Splunk booth in the world of solutions, where Cedric is standing by. Hey there, Cedric.
Hey, Steve. I was observing a few booths, and I made my way to the Splunk booth. Did you get the joke, Steve? I hope you did. But anyway, I'm here on the Splunk booth, and I'm joined by a friend, like a Splunk friend, I would say, right? Aaron Schiffman, who is a Senior Technical Marketing Manager for Splunk Observability. Aaron, just to get us started, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Cedric. Thank you very much.
Awesome. I'm glad that you are here with us. I'm glad to learn more about Splunk. You have launched something earlier this year at Cisco Live in the US, which is called the Log Observer Connect for App Dynamics. I'm really interested to learn a bit more about what it really does, because I'm not familiar with it.
Sure, Cedric. I'd love to showcase what we're doing with Log Observer Connect for App Dynamics here for your audience. Log Observer Connect, to give you a little bit of a background, is an integration feature for AppDynamics that is for Splunk that gives those users who have who are performing application performance monitoring with AppDynamics the ability, with one single click of the button, to dive deep into the respective logs within Splunk. So we're talking about deep contextual links for things like applications, business transactions, snapshots, not only the entity that we're investigating, but the exact time that we're investigating as well. We are fully supporting SSO, so single sign-on, which means that we don't have to log on to multiple tools when we're investigating something in AppDynamics. We have a single sign-on that launches us directly into Splunk, so we're saving a lot of time from having to log into multiple tools. Truly seamless integration.
Truly seamless integration. And luckily we have a computer mouse close to you, so I would love to see a demo of it if you can, Aaron.
Absolutely, Cedric. I'd love to show you a demo.
Thank you.
What we're looking at is AppDynamics, and we're looking at an overview page. And we've clearly seen that we have a clear indicator that one of the applications is performing poorly, the ADE commerce application with a red indicator that says to us that something's going on with this particular application. We want to investigate why, so I will drill into it. We are presented what we call is a flow map, and this is the end-to-end correlated view of our application and all its interdependencies, meaning that we're able to understand out of the box using our AppDynamics agents all the different interdependencies, including third-party API calls, different applications that are tied into this larger ecosystem to understand if there's a problem within one of these dependencies that's causing a reaction for this application, why this application is behaving slowly, we can understand the processing path for what's going on here. Over to the right, we have a lot of great information. We have what's called business transaction health. AppDynamics does a fantastic job identifying the most important business transactions that the business depends on. For example, checking out or running a payment process with a credit card service. We can also see other aspects, such as what's called a transaction scorecard. So we quickly are able to identify those transactions that are running slowly, or if there are errors, for example. But since AppDynamics really focuses on the business and business outcomes, I'd like to show you what we can present as far as business transactions go. We have these very familiar types of business transactions that most anybody that has ever ordered anything online is familiar with, such as confirming an order. Well, if the confirm order transaction's not behaving correctly, we know that's going to impact our business and our business's bottom line, i.e. revenue. So we certainly want to address that. 30-second delays is certainly not an acceptable rate. So what I want to do is drill into this. Again, we're presented with a flow map, but a little bit more focused flow map for this specific business transaction. We can see over here that we are experiencing a large number of errors, and we want to know why. So what I like to do is I like to look at the transaction snapshots. AppDynamics starts automatically collecting these snapshots when transactions deviate from what normal behavior is, using an anomaly detection, also using baselines. So we use AI and ML technology to drive focus on what is potentially the issue. And as I drill into this, we're already presented with a lot of potential issues as to what could possibly be causing this error.
Okay.
Most likely we can stop our investigation right here.
Okay.
But what we're talking about today is the ability to dive even deeper with Splunk logs. So as you notice, there's a view logs in Splunk. All I have to do is click this button, and we're driven directly into Splunk. As you notice, that I did not have to enter a user credential. Again, this is a seamless integration between AppDynamics and Splunk, or vice versa.
Yep.
And what I can do is I can scroll down, and I'm only looking at 20 events, which is a pretty short number of events.
And it seems to me it's really important just because it saves a lot of time, and that's probably like one of the unique selling points. Can you like kind of just give us a quick look into that?
Yeah, absolutely,
Before we
Cedric.
go back to the studio.
It's absolutely a time saver. We're going to reduce the mean time to resolve issues because we're using App Dynamics to identify where that potential issue is, and then with those deep contextual links, with a single click of a button, we're able to go right to where it matters most, that particular error at that particular time.
Okay, right where it matters the most. Thank you so much, Aaron, for being with me.
Absolutely.
I will hang out with you a little bit more to learn more about Log Observer Connect, but we're throwing it back to the studio to Steve right now.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Cedric and Aaron. Great demo on that. As promised, we're now going to take a look at the integration of Splunk ITSI and Thousand Eyes and see how they are partnering up for better visibility into our network and our application performance, and all from a single place, all from one pane of glass. Alpa is here in studio with James Hodge. I'm going to send it over to you, Alpa.
Thank you, Steve. I am indeed. We've been having a great chat, haven't we already,
yeah.
James? I'm excited to bring our viewers into our conversation. How are you today?
I'm great.
Good.
My first Cisco Live,
Yeah.
and it's been incredible to see all the tech and the partners, and this has been brilliant.
Amazing. The energy is great as
Oh, yeah, it's
well.
phenomenal.
And we just had that great demo as well with Cedric, didn't we?
I was really impressed.
Yeah. So lots of questions for you, James,
Okay.
right? So I'm going to start with the first one, okay? So we heard Mike and Laura talk about building a resilient future. Why is digital resilience so important for organizations today?
Well, I think if you look at any business now, whether it's your local council, a bank, government, digital is critical infrastructure for everyone. They rely on digital technology, and without that, they don't really have a business anymore. So we're moving from thinking about IT monitoring, network monitoring, or even security, into actually we need to make the entire service resilient, because really we're thinking about things like business continuity. It also builds up confidence. The more resilient that underlying infrastructure is, the more agile I'm able to be as a business. I trust the tooling. I can go and build that innovation velocity, and because we understand what's going on inside of the infrastructure.
And when you have that confidence, there's no really stopping you. You know, you feel equipped to go beyond.
Yeah, exactly. It builds that momentum.
Great. And earlier today, you spoke in the keynote about unlocking digital resilience with Splunk's unified approach to observability. So what advantages does being unified offer to organizations? Offer to organizations.
Yeah. We'll get there. And it's complex. I think the hardest bit about technology now is there are so many different toolings that you can find. Like on average, a company would have maybe 20 different tools to think about monitoring. And that's great if you're thinking about a point solution. But when you start to move up into the enterprise, what you really want is to enable collaboration. It's not about the tool, it's really about people, and how do you and I start to go, hey, there's a problem, how do we go and collaborate together? So what we've done is Splunk merging into Cisco, or being acquired by Cisco, is starting to take App Dynamics, take Cisco Observability Cloud. We've got 3-tier APM, we've got native cloud APM, underpinned by the Splunk Enterprise platform, and then putting a service wrapper on top of it. And the really exciting thing we announced today was the Thousand Eyes integration as well. So that is all completely unified to go and really think about how do you and I get better visibility, so when something goes wrong, we're not in that big war room shifting blame on everyone else. Like, hey, we know where the issue is. That's the two of us to figure out. Everyone else can go on their day jobs, and let's go and get it fixed.
Yes, we spoke earlier just about acting fast and equipping our teams to be able to do that in a way, that we've not been able to do before. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, and the cost of downtime is huge. The Global 2000, it cost $400 billion they were losing to downtime.
Wow.
So $200 million per organization. So it's not just doing IT monitoring, it's actually preventing loss at the business and transformation velocity and those type of things. So it's a really big issue.
And a lot of learning, I guess, to come from that as well. So once you start to see and identify some of those challenges, you already know for the next time, potentially, what that could be.
And it also means you trust that monitoring. So when you go and think, I'm going to launch a new application or do something different, like, hey, are we covered? Let's go, because if there's an issue, I know I can see it early. And I can get on top of it. So I'm confident to give something a go.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's quite the right business term, give it a go.
It's empowering, right?
Exactly. Liberating, actually, is the word we'd normally use.
Very good, yes. So we heard earlier in the week about unifying data across Cisco and Splunk. Can you tell us a bit more about what you're excited about here?
So I think I'm really excited about the One Cisco message, especially the data, the AI-enabled data center, and then what we're doing with resilience along with Thousand Eyes and other parts of Cisco. Because when you get that right, I think what buyers are starting to look for is they don't want monitoring, they don't want security, they want to go and think about the future that they need to go into, that AI-enabled data center, they want that to be resilient, to work, all the toolings to start to go together. So now being part of Cisco, we're able to really underpin that by this kind of data plane that then allows us to go and start to see where do we actually need to go and invest time. And we're only just at the beginning of this with Cisco, and I think you'll see more announcements coming out over the coming months of bringing all of that together to be world leading.
How exciting.
Oh, it's incredibly exciting, and a huge amount of kudos to people like Jitu Patel for bringing that vision together.
Absolutely.
I think Cisco's got a revolution, or evolution and revolution at the same time.
Love that. Thank you, James. So let's talk a bit about ITSI. So I've heard it being described as giving a bird's eye view of your whole digital environment. Is that correct?
It is. So the product is IT Service Intelligence, which we shorten to ITSI.
Yes.
And what we're really looking at is the interdependencies between the functional layer, the service layer, and the business layer. So if I have, say, a problem with a database, I can see what relies on that database, what business services rely on those, and then services rely on that, and then what business services rely on those. So what I can work out is how critical is that failure? Is that going to go and mean customers can no longer order from my website, or I can't go and ship a product? Or is it just going to decrease the effectiveness slightly? So I can decide really, do I want to do something about it now, in an hour, tomorrow, a week, or a month's time, or maybe never? So I can start to really understand the interdependencies of my entire digital estate, whether it's networking, infrastructure, applications, AI, all of that together, and we have to really decompose it.
And when you explain this to your customers, what's their reaction?
They actually quite often don't believe that you can go and get to that state. And then they said, but if you can, I want one of those. And the most important part is we can go and give that single pane of glass that you can go and drill down into. But the really unique thing is we can start to do predictive analytics to say, how is a service working? Because we understand on a Monday morning it behaves like this, a Friday, maybe a Sunday evening it's different. So we can be proactive on alerts to say, something doesn't look right, you now need to go and look at that.
Jump on it. Thank you so much, James. That's amazing. Thank you for your insights, and handing over back to you now, Steve.
I appreciate it so much, Alpa, and thank you to James as well. Just loving the Splunk story, loving the integration with Cisco, and really loving the fact that wherever we go right now, we are no longer having to explain that Splunk is a part of Cisco. People just know it now. Our customers love that, and people across the industry love it as well. In about 30 seconds, we are going to roll into a replay of yesterday's IT leadership session on the role that IT is playing today and the way Cisco is leading the way with the experience. We've got Fletcher Previn, Cisco's Senior VP and Chief Information Officer. He took a deep dive into the ways IT is shaping corporate culture today, helping the employee experience in enterprise organizations. Let's watch that roll right now. We will meet you right back here in the studio on the other side. Let's go ahead and take it away. Thanks for being with us on the live stream.
Coming. Welcome to Cisco Live, the IT leadership track. So what I planned to share with you this morning was just a little bit about what I've learned in the time that I've been CIO at Cisco and before that at IBM, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And really, honestly, it sort of applies to any kind of function that you might be leading in an IT organization. So first, a little bit about me, some background. There was a period of time where I thought I might go into entertainment, and I spent some time on movie sets, and when I was in college I worked as an intern at the David Letterman Show and the Conan O'Brien Show, but ultimately I realized I really wanted to work in tech, and after I graduated I moved out to Silicon Valley on the west coast of the United States, and got a job working at Walmart.com. Became a Microsoft certified systems engineer, then got into networking, then went over to IBM. I was at IBM for quite a while and eventually became CIO for the last 4 years that I was at IBM. And now I've been at Cisco for about 3.5 years as the CIO of Cisco. So let's talk about what actually is the job of a CIO. Is that a made-up job? What do you do as the CIO? So if I think about the things you sort of have to deal with, you've got to manage a budget. You've got to deal with cybersecurity and regulatory obligations. You have to manage your vendors, manage all of your contracts for third-party software and otherwise. Maybe present to the audit committee, make sure you're not getting hacked. Manage your stakeholders that are always asking you to do a lot more than you have capacity to do. And maintain operational excellence, right? You can't have outages. So let's call those sort of the risk management category of stuff. Those are the bad things that cannot happen. Then you've just got to manage your organization, right? In my case, the IT department's about 10,000 people. I think I have 12 direct reports, and so you're just doing the job of a manager. You're addressing a certain amount of tech debt. Unless your company went into business yesterday, all of us are going to have things that are old and that we need to replace or wish we didn't have. And you got to come up with some sort of a strategy and a plan for what you're going to get done this year. Let's call that stuff the basics. So, these are the things that you have to deal with no matter what company or what kind of organization you're at. If you're at a bank, or you're at a government, or you're at a tech startup, or you're at a food supply company, whatever it is, I think this list is going to be pretty consistent and the same. So if that's the same everywhere, then how do you make IT a differentiator? How do you make IT your secret weapon that helps define what it's like to work in your organization and help create a culture where talented people want to work and where great people can do their best work? You do that by, these are the things that will differentiate you. By focusing on the culture. Your culture is really the only unique thing that you have. Over time, people can steal your technology. Or they can try to. That's just kind of what happens. But it's pretty difficult to steal somebody's culture. And leading with the experience, making IT a servant function that exists to help everybody in the company, and by designing the future of work in a forward-thinking way. But you can only do those things if numbers 1 through 9 are well taken care of. If you're constantly having outages or cybersecurity problems or audit findings, it doesn't leave any room to focus on the things that are going to be different and make you special, right? So, basically, you got to manage your budget, make sure you don't have bad audit findings, and make sure you don't have any cybersecurity incidents. And so then you can focus on these other things. And we spend a lot of time thinking about IT as a driver of culture change, and really trying to position IT as the function that enables everyone to be their best and to do their best work. So when you come into a new organization, whether it's large or small, there's a pretty common set of things that you probably want to do to understand what you've got, what's going well, what's not going well, what do you need to change, how do you get everybody aligned. And so this is sort of generally the sequence that I would recommend doing those things in. First step would be bring the team together. Let people tell you what they think could be better, what could be improved, what's not going well. Have a retrospective. And then work together to co-create your purpose, your vision, your mission statement. And that's important to do as a team, because then it's not you just telling everybody, here's what our mission's going to be. It's something that we created together. Share that with the entire organization, develop your roadmap, set some KPIs or OKRs around how you're going to measure whether you're making progress or not, and then create a culture of innovation and accountability, which is really about creating the emotional safety necessary for people to take calculated risks. And that's really about listening to people and having a culture where people are not afraid to tell you what they think, and especially if they think you're wrong. You need that input to have a healthy organization. So when I first became CIO of Cisco, I brought the team together. This was the template that I used to have the workshop with the team over 3 days and say, coming out of here in 3 days, we're going to have these things filled in. Our vision, our mission, our values, the goals for the year, our objectives or OKRs, and then how are we going to do that, right? What's the strategy? We, by the way, had a live illustration artist come to those workshops and help document those things. That can be a helpful artifact to have afterwards because you can share that with the whole organization. You can hang it up in the office. This is just one of one that we had about culture, but you get the idea. So let's just take a minute and talk about IT and why it matters and why it's more important than ever. And it's not just a back office expense that you wish you didn't have. Those days are long over. It's really an enabler for the business. It plays a very large role in answering the question, what is it like to work here? It defines culture is a function of how work gets done. And the shortest distance to engaging employees is what's in their hand or what's on the desk. So how well we're doing our jobs in IT is not trivial. It's really core to creating a culture of high performance, of operational excellence, of where talented people want to work. And so, we take this very seriously at Cisco. The quality of the work that we're delivering in IT is a signal to the employees. And depending on the quality of work we're producing, we're either telling people that we really value them, or if things are not good, we're telling them that we don't really care about them or their time. And so this is why it's so important to have professional pride in operational excellence in IT. To have people that really love what they do for a living, that when they do something, there's pride in the work. And even in the things that no one's going to see, there's nobody inspecting it, that just comes from within. It's in the work, whether it's cabling in a data center or how you code something on the back end. That doesn't really have a lot to do with how much you pay someone. That comes from hiring people who are passionate about what they do for a living and they love their job. And it's so important to create these really good user experiences for our users. And people's expectations of what is a good experience is a moving target because that's being informed by what they see in their personal lives and in mobile experiences and all these kind of great frictionless SaaS products that you see out there. And so this idea that today's best is tomorrow's minimum. You always have to be iterating and improving. And so people are having these great experiences in their personal lives, and sometimes the experience at work is just not that great. And it's just not okay to have these great experiences in your personal life and these really difficult enterprise complex experiences at work. Just because it's enterprise doesn't mean it has to be bad. So our mission in Cisco IT is to enable everyone at the company to do the best work of their lives. It's one of our core values is to produce work that we're proud of, which is a higher standard than just getting things done. Are we proud of this thing that we're putting out? If we're not, we ought to really think about why are we putting it out there if we're not proud of it. And the idea that every minute that somebody spends struggling or fighting with a system or completing some process or completing some task, that's a minute taken away from them doing the thing that they were hired to do, the thing that they want to do, the thing that they feel fulfilled doing. And so we have to take really seriously these things that are detractors from doing the actual job that a person wants to be doing. When people get to do what they like doing, they'll be good at it. And so as the saying goes, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. It's good for the whole organization. So our vision statement for Cisco IT in 2025 is to be a user experience-led, AI-powered IT organization. Our values are important. They should guide us. They should be stable. They should really not change very often. And for us, those are trust, transparency, having passion for your craft, and kindness. We want to work with people who are kind, passionate about what they do, and believe in our purpose. If we surround ourselves with those kinds of people, we're going to be successful in whatever problems we happen to be trying to solve. This is our strategy. We lead with the user experience in everything that we do, even things that on the surface of it may not seem like they have an experience or need any design work. We embrace agile ways of working. This is about standardizing on an agile way of working across the whole org, creating well-formed teams, and some other things that I'll talk about in a minute. And using AI as a force multiplier, or a way for people to be able to do 10x what they could normally do without AI. These are our top-level goals for Cisco IT in 2025, that 50% of everything we do in the IT department should really be assisted by AI in some way, and we should try to reduce the amount of friction or difficulty in the environment for our users by 50%. And I'll talk more in a minute about how we measure that. Of course, we can't get through a presentation without talking about AI. And that AI and machine learning have been around for a while, but it really wasn't, I think, until ChatGPT 4 came along that everybody really started to see the huge disruption that AI was going to bring. And right here in 2025, we're kind of almost at the stage of agent-based AI doing things on our behalf. But the next couple of years are going to be really, really interesting, and the rate and pace of things is really accelerating. The current state of AI is really kind of about workflows, automation, decision-making, but it's not yet fully autonomous. There are certain things that there's a lot of work to be done around compliance and making sure things are done in an ethical way and consistent with our policies and so on. But where we're headed is things like self-learning AI, AI-driven API ecosystems, decision-making AI. So as the CIO, I really need to focus on balancing innovation with risk management, making sure we stay compliant, consistent with our ethical AI policies, while also figuring out how to embrace AI for efficiency and automation and productivity across the organization. AI is going to have a significant impact on the skills that we need in the IT department, how the work gets done, and the technology stack itself. In terms of talent, we will probably need fewer software developers. That's kind of an interesting side topic, is we always thought software developer was the one job that AI would never disrupt. Turns out AI is pretty good at writing software. We will probably need things like flow engineers, end-to-end business process engineers, prompt engineers. It'll be a sort of new category of things, people that really understand how your complex business operates end-to-end. IT will become the manager of these AI agents, and those AI agents will become increasingly capable and be able to do more and more over time. And an AI-operated enterprise is going to make us a lot more efficient, but also expose us to some new risks. This is why things like Cisco AI Defense that you heard about earlier today are so important. This is the management system that I use with my team. Part of this was developed during COVID and hybrid work to overcome the fact that we're not all in the office together every day. So I have an everyday huddle with my team in the morning. And that is a 30-minute meeting. There's no agenda. It's really just so that we get time together for people to talk about what's top of mind, what's going on in the environment, how was people's weekends, because we're not passing by each other's desks at work anymore. I want to lower the bar, or make it easy for people to bring something up. If you have to wait until a once a week or once a month staff meeting, that's a pretty high bar to raise a concern. If you're talking casually every morning, then you're just getting a lot of face time with the team, even though you're not together in the office. We have a weekly retrospective as a team. What's going well? What's not going well? How do we improve? That's a 45-minute meeting. Once a month, I have a monthly operating review with each of my direct reports. And then once a quarter, we come together in person for an OKR and strategy alignment session and do any adjustments that are needed to the strategy, the OKRs, or otherwise. But this is sort of the management system of how we operationalize things in the IT department at Cisco, at least. Here's how we have defined a sprint and the associated agile ceremonies. A sprint for us is 2 weeks. The product owner does the backlog grooming at the start of each week of the sprint. That then gets broken down into the iteration planning with the whole team. There are 15-minute stand-ups every day. By the way, if you're going to have a stand-up, it can't be an hour long. It's called a stand-up to make sure it's short, because in the old days, everybody would be standing up, and that makes sure that it can't go on for too long. And then at the end of the 2-week sprint, there's a showcase where the team shares what was delivered, and a retrospective with a focus on how do we get better. What went well, what didn't go well, what are we struggling with, how do we improve? And then we repeat that every 2 weeks. And one of the things that that does is your stakeholders really should be coming to the showcase rather than asking you for status all the time. And the blast radius of a misalignment is at maximum 2 weeks, because your stakeholders can then say, actually, that's not what I'm looking for. And you avoid a situation where you've worked on something for a year and then only then find out that it's not what they wanted. Every request in our backlog is looked at as the team does their discovery. They estimate how long it will take to do their work using story points. We use a modified Fibonacci scale ranging from 1 being the smallest to 20 being the biggest. You know, there's not a whole lot of difference between 12 and 13, but there is between 8 and 13, and so that's why. And the whole team is really accountable for the story. And so the value here is not so much in the absolute number of points. The value comes from the team coming together and having the discussion about how complex is this going to be, how difficult is it going to be, how are we going to solve it, and then everybody getting aligned on you know, what the plan's going to be, and driving that alignment is where the real value comes in. Cisco is a fairly large organization. We're about 96,000 employees and about 40,000 contractors. So from an IT perspective, we're supporting a workforce of around 130-odd thousand-ish people and devices. You can see some of the metrics here. I won't read this. The IT department, by the way, is about 10,000 people. Security, you know, like everybody else, we attract a lot of advanced apex predator type threats. Advantage continues to go to adversaries, not to the good actors. We have to be right all the time. They have to just be right once. And so this really becomes an exercise in making sure that we understand our environment and the systems that underpin our environment better than the bad actors that are trying to break in. And we get a lot of help with that, with telemetry, with feeding things into tools like Splunk and being able to do automation against those things. You know, we receive about 6 million emails a day as an example, but we're deleting close to 4 million of those right at the border. 20 billion DNS request lookups per day, 47 terabytes of internet traffic inspected every day. So let's talk about the user experience for a second, and what does it really mean when I say we're leading with the user experience? And you're going to hear from Kristen later on more detail of how that actually gets operationalized. But here's the IT department. Here's how I've organized it. And generally speaking, I like to organize the IT department by system or platform. You know, if you have an experience team, sometimes you can organize by value stream or by experience. That's not how I organize the IT department. I organize generally by platform and system. And so here's a little more detail on what is in each of those things. So if I start at like 1 o'clock on this chart, you've got HRIT, IT finance, business operations in that first wedge. Commerce engineering would be our ERP, Oracle, SAP, finance IT, subscription billing platform, partner systems, configure price quote is in there. Then you've got the device management team, the digital workplaces, things like the intranet, the help desk, your devices, network engineering and infrastructure, self-explanatory, data platforms. IT security and resilience, that's where the firewalls, VPN, EDR, XDR, our SOC, identity management are. Then around 7 o'clock would CRM engineering, that's our Salesforce and CRM team. Above that is change control and release management and our CI/CD pipelines that are used across the engineering teams in IT. Manufacturing and supply chain tools. Cisco licensing, which I know is a popular topic probably in this room. It always gets a lot of feedback. Smart licensing, SmartNet Total Care, old PAC licenses, enterprise agreements, that's all in that product lifecycle IT. And then the IT design and experience team, which I'll talk about in a second. But that's where you've got research, analytics, UI, UX, strategy, content, multimedia, agile, visual design, and that team actually does a lot. But Kristen will talk more about that. But point is, when I became CIO, one of the first changes I made was adding that function to the IT department. And while generally I'm trying to create cross-functional teams by platform and not centralize things, like I don't believe in having a centralized architecture team. I think that stuff is better distributed out into the teams by platform doing the work. Design and user experience is the one thing that I centralize because it's a scarce resource. And first of all, we have to make decisions about how that team's time is most effectively spent. And second of all, it allows for some consistency. We already kind of have the experiment where design can be distributed, and what you get are very uneven results. But it also allows the designers on that team to be members of a design team and not be the lone designer on an infrastructure team. And as I said, when I say design and user experience, I'm talking about a lot more than what something looks like. I'm talking about the research, analytics to make sure you're understanding that research correctly and really solving the right problem, content design, UX, UI, visual design, the full stack of design resources that you need to create an experience. And by the way, what is a good experience in the era of AI is going to be an interesting evolving thing. It's really going to change our perception of what a good experience is. Right now it's mostly prompts and text, but that's going to change. It's probably not all going to be in a browser. It's probably less to some degree about the visual and more about the flow and the words and being able to communicate intent instead of particular actions. And you know, users can tell when you put your heart and soul into building something. And it's important to get that right. If, you know, like in this example, the image on the left, yes, that is not a good user experience. People want things to be simple, intuitive. The days of being able to give somebody a big manual and have a lot of training to do something are over. We have to make these things sort of self-explanatory. Yeah. So if our goal in Cisco IT is to reduce employee friction by half, how do we know if we're making progress on that? Because what you measure is what improves. So we've created a balanced scorecard that we call the Employee Task Friction Index. And here's the math. First, we look at the difficulty. How hard is this thing? And that's done by measuring task completion on a survey of 1 to 5, which gets translated into a percentage of 20 to 100%. Ease of use. So task completion plus ease of use equals difficulty. Then we look at impact. How important is this task? And how often do people have to do it? And you take those two things together, and you get the Employee Task Friction Index. I think Kristen will cover this in a bit more detail because there is a little bit more to it. But generally, that's the idea. And so if this is a terrible experience that you do once in your whole career at Cisco, maybe it's not at the top of our list. If it's a thing that everyone in the company has to interact with multiple times a day and it's not good, that should really move to the top of our list of things we want to get after right away. Those scores then get surfaced in a dashboard that the design team have created called the Employee Insight Center. That is where we can see the health index of all of the applications that have been instrumented. Right now, it's about 130 of the most common tasks that employees have to do. So if I'm an application owner or I'm a manager, I can go here and see what the application health is for any of the apps that I'm responsible for. And from my perspective, it doesn't so much matter whether something is good or bad, but for the period of time that you are responsible for it, it needs to get better. And the point here is we really use this Insight Center to help us prioritize the backlog. What stuff should we be prioritizing in terms of making things better for employees? And, when you're the CIO, it's very easy to get distracted or completely consumed with big projects like ERP upgrades or CRM consolidations. And, but it's those experiences that touch all employees that I really like to pay special attention to, because those are the things that lead people to have a perception about the whole IT function and whether it's well run or poorly run. For a lot of employees, one of the main ways that they will interact with IT, or the main ways that they will experience interacting with IT, is through the intranet. So we need to make sure we get that right, that it's easy to use, and that things on the intranet are set up to be intuitive. So we've done a lot of work on making it easy to get the applications people need, get support, look up other employees. Here's where you can have one-click access to the applications that people need. That is an app store that is integrated into ServiceNow and licensing, and there's a lot of plumbing on the back end. But from an employee perspective, it's one click to get the applications that you need. Looking up people is one of the most common tasks people do on the internet, making that really good. Having that be a LinkedIn-like experience where you can actually figure out who somebody works for and what they do for a living. Making a great mobile experience for those things. That seems obvious, but when I first came into the role, there really was no mobile experience for the employee directory. And then being able to get help, obviously, is another big reason people go to the intranet, and making sure that that is easy. In this example, the employee has uploaded a screenshot of an error that they're getting, and our AI assistant called Bridget, or Bridge IT, is analyzing that image and suggesting a solution to the problem. So the other thing, in the employee space, typically you replace laptops based on age, somewhere between 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. There's a smarter way to do that. For a lot of people, they have no problem holding onto a laptop for a longer period of time if it's working fine for them. So replacing that laptop is actually just friction to somebody who doesn't want a new laptop. In big numbers, people don't want a new laptop all the time. If it's working fine for them, they'd rather just keep it. So we're able to, excuse me, collect telemetry off of the endpoints, things like battery, CPU, disk, memory, and we know if a person's laptop is working well or not. If it's working well, we don't bother them. If it's starting to show signs of having a problem, we'll reach out and say you have to get a new one if it's beyond a certain age. But what it allows us to do is have a policy that says you can actually have a new laptop anytime you want. Because most people don't want a new laptop all the time. The people who do are the people who really benefit from that, engineers, sales engineers, or otherwise. But it allows me to sort of squeeze the money balloon into a different shape and really benefit the population that wants to have the latest and greatest, and in some cases actually even save money. So right now, when you go into our devices portal on the intranet, you will have the option, if you're an employee in good standing, to buy out the laptop that you've been using if you're getting a new one, and keep it for yourself or your kids or whatever, because we can remotely over the air deprovision it. This is our hybrid worker bundle. When I first came to Cisco, this is what they sent me. It was basically a router with some complicated instructions. We have done some work to create a really best-in-class consumer-like experience around hybrid work, and put together the things that we think deliver an end-to-end secure remote office solution in a way that really only Cisco can. If you think about hybrid work, it's a pretty complicated, you've got remote access, application performance, management across the last mile of the network that we don't manage, endpoint, collaboration, and the kind of end-to-end suite of things that you need. So here's what we include in the bundle: a WebEx device, either the larger screen or the smaller screen, depending on what people want, the laptop, an employee badge if you're a new hire, a wireless access point, a keyboard and trackpad. If you tell us that you have unreliable internet, we'll put a cellular backup gateway in there, and a Meraki MX security appliance, which we will then manage remotely for the employee, all supported by the Cisco software stack of WebEx, Thousand Eyes, Duo, Umbrella, Meraki, Cisco Secure Client, App Dynamics, as well as some custom telemetry that we have implemented. So very often we can tell if a person's having a problem before they even know. And you got to be careful about cause and effect, but the data is when people replace whatever they had in their home before with what we send them, we see lower latency, less packet loss, faster DNS lookup times, things that are probably going to translate to an easier workday and a more reliable meeting experience. These are these help zone kiosks that we've been deploying in our offices. The idea is you go up there, get connected to a remote support advisor. If they can't fix the problem on the phone, they can remotely open one of those lockers and issue a replacement laptop. You can also swipe your badge and buy accessories from the smart kiosk machine. We've deployed a fair number of these already, with more planned for this year. People really like them. It's a nice way to have support available 24/7. We monitor our hybrid workforce through our hybrid work operations center. That's where a lot of the telemetry comes into our NOC. And we're looking at the performance of the public internet, the performance of SaaS tools. We use things like Thousand Eyes to do some of that, but also the performance of people's remote work environments. So let's talk about Agile for a minute. There's really two sides to the Agile coin. One is how you're organized, and the other one is how the work gets done. So we've taken the 12 Agile principles and bookended that with actual hardline org design, reporting chain, KPIs and metrics, and then support that whole program with an Agile coaching function and tooling and metrics and dashboards, which I'll show in a minute. A well-formed team, our definition of a well-formed team is it is cross-functional, it is 6 to 10 people, give or take. It's dedicated to something, and it has all of the skills that they need to put something into production with as few dependencies on other people as possible. And they pull their work from a stable backlog. So that would be developers, testers, a product owner, a Scrum lead, maybe a subject matter expert, maybe a designer, depending what they're working on. Here's how we're organized in IT. Each of the people who report to me are domain leaders. That was what each one of the pieces of the wheel that I showed before are. If I start at the bottom of this chart, groups of 6 to 10 people are an Agile team. A group of Agile teams form a component. They report to a component leader. Groups of component leaders report to component family leaders. They report to a domain leader. Each of my direct reports are a domain leader. Here's our Cisco IT operational health dashboard. So this dashboard is showing who's taken the Agile training, are people checking in with their manager, what's the ratio of employees to contractors, what's the span of control, how many direct reports does each manager have, what's our ratio of doers to enablers, right? People who are hands-on keyboard doing real work versus people who are more coordinators of work. We're an operations team, so we want to keep that ratio pretty low. This dashboard shows, are the Agile teams meeting the definition of well-formed? What are the enablers versus doers ratio on that team? What percentage of that team's work is going to strategic things versus tactical things? What is the health of the backlog? Is the backlog refined and ready for the team to pick up work? Or if that team were to go into the backlog, is the work still waiting for requirements and not really ready for them to pull forward? And then what's the quality? What's the defect rate of this team? This dashboard of metrics I review with each of my leaders each month. It allows us to have really targeted conversations about throughput, velocity, cycle time, backlog health, defect rates, deployments to production, Agile maturity of the team. One of the other things we've done is we used to have a lot of different ways that people would give work to the IT department to get done. That created a lot of chaos. it created some feedback like, I give you all my money and I get nothing in return. So now we have one way to give us work. You submit it in Jira Align, the team picks it up, they make sure the requirements make sense and we understand what people are actually asking us to do. It then gets prioritized, estimated for how long it's going to take to do it, and then committed to be delivered on an approximate delivery date, and then that is shared back with the stakeholders. And we are making progress. Throughput, velocity is improving, cycle time is reducing. A lot of that is coming from forming the teams properly, but a lot of that is also on engineering excellence and getting our CI/CD pipelines in order and getting after automation. And so AI, it's an important part of our strategy. It's the third pillar of how we're going to be able to prepare ourselves for the future. And we've spent a lot of time learning how to interact with machines, learning programming languages, figuring out how to get the outcome we need by breaking down that outcome into smaller tasks that we give to a machine, learning things like C++, Python, Java. That's pretty much been the last 100 years of computing. What's changed now is that computers have learned how to talk to us with generative AI. And that's having some really profound impacts on how we interact with machines and the role that they're playing in our lives. And so if computers can now talk to us, the next great programming language is probably English. And by the way, the rate of innovation is really accelerating. It took about 12,000 years to get from the Neolithic period to the Industrial Age. It took about 50 years to get from the Industrial Age to the Information Age. But AI is accelerating that innovation cycle because it is able to self-optimize. If you sort of think, well, it probably feels like we're living in these really modern, futuristic, space-age times, but with the innovation rate going so quickly, we're going to look back on this time in a short amount of time as being like the early Stone Age of AI. 18 months from now, 2 years from now, it's going to be really interesting how much has changed. And that's because normally when you would invent something, you'd build it, you'd put it out there, you'd release it, you'd test it, you'd get feedback from users, then you'd go back and iterate on it, you'd release it again. And so that whole innovation loop takes a while. AI is able to self-optimize and do that in an almost instantaneous and continuous loop. So you have this sort of hockey stick curve of innovation happening. And so if that's the period we're facing, how do we prepare as the IT department? This is a question I get a lot. What is going to change over the next 3 years? That's a hard question to answer, especially when innovation is going as quickly as it is now. And usually those predictions are wrong anyway. I mean, have you ever seen a prediction for 3, 5, or 10 years from now that was right? So I think a better question is, what is not going to change over the next few years? Because you can plan for those things. You can think about what are the things that are going to for sure be stable and not change. It's hard to imagine that we're ever going to live in a time where we don't care about whether employees like working here or not. It's hard to imagine that we're not going to want to have good products. It's hard to imagine that we're not going to want to have licensing that's simpler, and so on and so on. And so you can build a plan around those things. So the pillars of our strategy can be somewhat stable. AI will be a force multiplier for human productivity. We really want to lead with the experience. If you get the experience right, you've solved a whole bunch of other things, and you can work backwards from that. Our core values won't change: trust, transparency, hiring people who love what they do for a living and are kind to each other. And time is really our most precious commodity. If you look at how much time all of us spend at work, we are going to spend about 144 months at work in our life. 60 months of those will be spent on doing administrivia, things that are not really core to your job: email, expense reports, booking travel, scheduling meetings, and so on. You'll spend about 48 months of that time in meetings on average. So that means throughout the life that you will spend at work, 75% of that time is going to be spent on things other than the thing that you said you want to be when you grow up. That's not good. But AI can really help us. We are quickly approaching a time where you can have a digital twin of yourself, and you can focus on the things that are high value, things that you actually wanted to do for a living, and have your AI twin do everything else. That's possible because we don't have to be the interpreter of breaking outcomes down into simple tasks. Instead, we can now communicate intent to these AI systems. So that new world is going to require a lot of AI infrastructure. IT professionals like all of you are the ones that are going to build that future. The number of people who actually understand how all of this works is getting fewer, not greater. So IT engineers will sort of become like doctors are to human beings. IT professionals are to the AI infrastructure of the future. Someone has to actually know how all this stuff works and build it and maintain it and take care of it. In Cisco IT, we've been building AI clusters using Cisco Ethernet fabric, compute, storage, software. We'll build more of that this year, but this stuff is running real production workloads, things like noise cancellation for WebEx, next bestseller action, general employee productivity. You'll hear more about Bridget from Kristen, but this is basically supposed to be the digital equivalent of a friend that you have that has worked at Cisco for 40 years that knows the answers to all things Cisco. So you can go to Bridget today and say, I'm in a conference room that's having bad network performance. Is there an issue going on? I'm a salesperson. Help me write an email to a customer that explains why Cisco firewalls are better than a competitor. When is my laptop due to be replaced? What is the vacation policy in this country? It can find all the answers for that. We've embedded that also into our version of WebEx and soon into a mobile app. Developer productivity, another huge target for AI. Turns out AI is good at writing software. We have made GitHub Copilot available to all of our software developers inside of IT. Hybrid work, whether you're back in the office still fully remote, or some mixture of both, hybrid work in some fashion is here to stay. And by the way, I've looked at all the data. There's no evidence that being in the office has impact on productivity, but there's a lot of evidence that having engaged employees has a good outcome. And so that's sort of the challenge, is how do we engage employees when they're not in the office all the time and avoid some of these unintended outcomes of hybrid work. Feeling like this is a transactional relationship, not being connected to the people you work with, having higher attrition. And there's some interesting things that are happening on the technology front that might help us. We want to have a workforce of patriots, not mercenaries. So how do you bridge the gap between in-person and remote? One of the things we've been experimenting with in Cisco IT is spatial computing, specifically with the Apple Vision Pro. That's a journey, but it offers some interesting hope in what the future of hybrid work might look like. And maybe the whole concept of a meeting gets redefined, and the way that we visualize data and share information and collaborate is evolving. But we're right on the precipice of some really interesting breakthroughs in that space. We do use the AI features of WebEx, things like meeting summaries, catch me up to things I missed. That's really useful for global teams in different time zones. So anyway, wrapping up, these are sort of the key takeaways. Lead with the user experience. When you get the user experience right, a lot of other goodness flows from that. Bring the team together to create a clear vision, mission, strategy, then share that with the entire organization. Recognize and reward professional pride and operational excellence. Create the emotional safety needed to drive innovation. Measure the right things. What you measure is what improves. And really be thoughtful about leveraging AI as a teammate, not a team replacement, as a way to 10x everybody's productivity. And with that, thank you very much.
And welcome back to the broadcast studio and from our IT session on the role of IT today, all the unique ways that Cisco is leading with the experience. Right now, we're going to check out what's been happening all week over at the NOC. Let's go ahead and roll that video.
All right, well, hey guys, I'm over here in the NOC, and Joe Clark, it's always good to catch back up with you at these events. I feel like you've been my go-to person for so many different topics over so many years. But here's where in the Network Operations Center, I just want to set the stage for anyone that's not familiar with what happens here. You guys, at one level, provide network services for a live event.
We absolutely do. Thank you. Welcome back to Cisco Live. It's good to be talking to you as well. Every year we come out and we build this network ahead of time. I want to take you over here, just give you an idea. We just opened here in the world of solutions. We're already seeing a massive amount of traffic from our users. And these users, so 20 terabytes of traffic passed on the internet. In order to make that work, we have to build a super resilient network. Our mantra here is it's got to work. We don't have the luxury in 5-6 days of having failures, so we do everything we can, not only to highlight the great solutions that Cisco and our partners offer, but we want to do that in a way that's resilient, that we are almost guaranteed that things are going to work and we're going to give those attendees a great experience. And one of the ways we're doing that is with our partner NetApp and building a data center that reflects not only the scale, not only the cool new things, like we're doing generative AI this year to help us out, but also it gives us that performance, that resiliency to give that option of best world-class.
Well, I want to ask you about something, because I feel like I want to just set the stakes correctly for because a lot of times you go to an event and you go, oh, here's the wireless for the event, you figure out what that is, and it's everyone has low expectations for most events. This is different here, because I want us to remember the audience, because we've been coming to Cisco Live for a long time. Before Cisco Live, it was networkers. It's always been educationally focused, which we need to remember is very engineering focused. So when I think about your audience or the people that you need to make happy, you are doing something that your entire audience probably knows something about how to do. They certainly know when it's not working, and they have better ideas about how to fix it than most of us do. And so they may have opinions about how well you're doing your job. How much does that enter into you and the teams that you guys work with to pull this off, thinking about the fact, oh, these are my peers?
These are my peers. It's the way we do it is by not assuming it's one person's job. We bring a team of experts. You mentioned wireless. We have a large number of wireless subject matter experts that work tirelessly to not only deploy the APs, but to troubleshoot each. I mean, today, there was one AP was Christmas treeing, so just flashing. One AP, and they're on it. They're like, we got to get this one AP fixed. So it's really about recognizing the problems, and we have data center monitoring to be able to help them do that. Recognize the problems earlier, and get out early and get out in front of them before the attendees notice. And we do we watch X, we look at what are people saying about our network. We hope that they're saying great things, but if not, we're there. We're willing to take feedback, we're willing to take input, and we're going to act on it. We're going to give them that experience that they're looking for.
Well, and one thing is you're not just about providing access to internet so I can get my email. You guys are actually supporting a lot of partners, and not just Cisco, with all the demonstrations that are very network. They rely on the network. These things are not self-contained. We are very dependent on some type of cloud access, to use a generic term. So I just think it's interesting. I think it's a high wire act that you guys continue to pull off, and you guys continue to kind of work together. You also work with a lot of students.
Yes, we do.
And really bringing up a lot of talent, giving them a chance to be hands-on and learn, well, how do you use this gear in a live situation with all that entails?
We try to bring on new people every year. We try to build a world-class team that we can bring back year after year, and we can grow them. We've had people who started here in the NOC as just deploying APs. They're now part of the architecture and core team. So we're absolutely reflecting what you said, networkers, education. We reflect that in our team in the Network Operations Center. And we like stress. We're a little bit crazy, too.
That's so funny. I wonder if you could hand your mic over to Bobby, because we're going to bring him in for just a second. But guys, I'm going to introduce Bobby in just a second, because we do want to talk about NetApp. But physically, if you're at the event, you need to come here. This is the pretty part of the NOC, where they have the screens and people that are dressed nicely to answer questions. There's a huge group of people behind the scenes that are doing the work of keeping this up and running, monitoring it continually, doing, of course, all the setup and all the teardown, and plowing all their learning into what's going to happen next. But I want to bring in one of the foundations for resilience at this event. It's been this way for years, Bobby. I've always enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
You represent NetApp, and we've got a live shot of your Flex Pod here. I wonder if you could tell me what we're looking at, and what do I mean by live shot?
Absolutely. Let me give a little background about FlexPod. So it's a versatile solution from Cisco and NetApp. We've been doing this for the past 15 years, right? As Joe was talking about, we are talking about resiliency. We don't have room for error. right?
Yeah, exactly.
We wanted to make sure this works. So it's not just blinky lights, right? It works. What? So I have this redundant components already part of the FlexPod solution. It's a pre-validated.
Right.
I could run any workloads on it because the adaptability which provides by the NetApp storage operating system provides that. Joe was talking about running Splunk. He was talking about running AI. And with the X Series solution, it's modular.
Nice.
You have a compute node. How do you go AI to help the data scientists? You plop in a PCIe node with GPUs, which will enable you to start your AI journey. So,
well, what Joe had mentioned something about generative AI being kind of a different source of traffic and a load on the system. Is that part of NetApp and what you guys are doing this time?
Exactly. So what we ensure is as we Splunk or run Splunk or any other workloads, as I was telling about the adaptability given by storage operating system, gives customers the ability to run anything.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, he was talking about the resiliency mantra.
Yeah.
Now we have the NetApp Metro Cluster solution. We've been doing this for the past 10 years. We have a second side. We continuously replicate the data. We ensure that the user's data gets protected all the time. Again, it comes along with the solution. On top of it, we have this one called support from a customer user's FlexPod. They wanted to make sure that with one number, they could get all the support needed to support the whole solution. So as I was telling earlier, it's one stack,
right,
fully automated. Users can deploy the stack by running some of the Ansible automation developed by both NetApp and Cisco. Also, we have Cisco Intersight integration done, single pane of glass, where customers could monitor everything. And as you can see on some of the things on the screen.
Yeah, this is live monitoring of what you've got going on right now, correct?
This is live feed, right? So as I was saying, it's not just the blinky lights, it works. Joe was talking about 20 terabytes of data which is generated through the network. The management VMs are running on NetApp storage system. Again, the pre-validated architecture gives the customers, partners, the ability to deploy stuff without doing any guesswork.
Yeah.
Because our goal is to give the business outcome. As Joe was telling, for the past 10 years, we've been doing this. For EMEA as well as US, I have 2 systems. The way I say is, over these 10 years, maybe 400 to 500 connections where we've served it.
Right.
Without any issues, right? The resiliency mantra, what he was talking about. So that's what exactly I was talking about, the business outcome. The pre-validated solution, it works. You don't have to do any guesswork.
Well, I wonder if we could just take an extra moment here, because when I think about convergence and I think about different things that happen, UCS, of course, alone represents a lot of convergence in terms of how we used to think about processing and what that was connected to. You guys have taken that a step further and continue to make this part of your business model around saying, how do we take all these complex systems that need to work intelligently together, you pre-validate them, as you mentioned, so you're pre-architecting something that's going to do a lot of complex things in as simple a manner as possible. And that's what you're saying you continue to do here, now that you've added Intersight, and you've got different management interfaces, we're running generative AI. A lot of that would be a lot more difficult if we were doing that from scratch every single time, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, our goal is not to sell components, right? Yeah. Our goal is to sell solutions. That is the only way I could...
What do you want to achieve?
Yes, that's the only way I could give business outcome, right? So that's what we say. It's pre-validated. I can create repeatable building blocks using the automation story we built in.
Yeah.
I could get the same user experience when I look into my dashboard. I can put multiple systems over there, whether I look at the NetApp dashboards or the Intersight dashboards or any other dashboard which I'm integrating my systems into.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Well, Bobby, is there anything else that we wanted to make sure is covered?
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's good to talk to you again. Guys, there's no shortage of candy for engineers at a show like this, right? Because this is your peers, this is a chance to learn from others. But over here at the NOC, this is where you've got people like Bobby and a lot of others that are here to answer your realistic, actual questions about, well, what's different this year? What is being done well? What's not being done well? What did you learn so far, if anything they're willing to share? Trust me, further along in the week, they get a lot more open about what they can share because we get toward the end of that. This is a great place. Come join us at the NOC, ask questions, figure out what's going on. This is Rob. Thank you, guys.
The NOC, always one of our most popular demos and destinations here at Cisco Live. We're going to jump straight out now to Rob Boyd in the world of solutions at the AI AC Powerwall. Hey there, buddy.
Hey man, how's it going? I'm getting timing updates off camera here as you're cutting over to me, but it's going well, to answer your question. I think I heard that part correctly. We're having so much fun over here, and actually I want to introduce a customer of Cisco's graciously giving us his time. You were both the co-founder and And you're currently the Chief Technical Officer for Cluster Power. Am I getting that correct, Vlad?
Yes, yes.
Tell us what Cluster Power does, because I don't think many people realize how different AI workloads are for a data center. It means a different kind of data center. You guys are pioneering efficiency at all levels, optimization. Walk us through that.
Well, I guess that's our role, to keep that AI workloads flowing, right? So Cluster Power, it's a technology company coming up from Romania, and we're doing things a bit different. We've integrated basically 3 lines of business under the same umbrella. We are selling to our end customers large-scale AI infrastructures for tenants that are either training large language models, doing fine-tuning, retraining, or going into live production with inferencing. But not only that, we are providing them with this kind of services, but we are also building and operating our own data center that we are powering up with our own power production facility. So you could say from this perspective that we are a totally vertically integrated business.
Yeah, you have your own micro, kind of your own, what do we call that?
Microgrid environment.
Thank you, I was hoping you'd finish my sentence. Okay, perfect. I did not realize you were generating your own power though as well.
Yep.
And so you're very focused on making sure that you're using only what you need.
Yeah, I think that the AI game right now in 2025, it's a game about sustainability and efficiency.
Yeah.
We're looking at sustainability from a twofold factor. One, it's from a data center perspective, and we all know about the power usage effectiveness and how efficiently you can utilize the power to run the data center, right? But because we are also controlling the IT infrastructure and the IT workloads, we're looking at efficiency and sustainability also from the perspective of IT outcome or business outcomes. So essentially the question that you have to ask yourself, it's what is the outcome of the power that you are consuming with the data center? So we're looking at how are the IT workloads running on the servers, and what is the actual outcome of that? So by integrating the operational aspects of the business from power, data center, and IT infrastructure under the single umbrella, we are able to draw more outcomes from the same infrastructure, basically.
Okay. All right, and I like what you guys are doing this on UCS gear. You've got Nexus and Data Center Fabric. So you're using our tools to be able to do this, but you're taking it to that level that is fun to see, because I don't often get to see that side of it where we're actually producing it. But any final tips for anyone that's looking at doing this themselves? Because I feel like it is a lot to, you're biting off a big thing here.
Well, yeah, I think it's not an easy thing. And because we're next to McLaren stand over here, I think that running an AI supercomputer, it's very similar to creating and running a Formula One car, right?
Oh, sure. Well,
so
that's easy.
So one aspect is that they should use validated designs. They should use infrastructure and environments that have been tested out. And this is something that we've been working alongside with Cisco and with some of the announcements that we have seen during Cisco Live, going into this validated design for AI workloads.
Well, Vlad, I hate to cut you off. I know, because I'm going to stay talking to you for a little bit here. But guys, I'll throw it back to you, Steve, in the studio.
I appreciate it, and Vlad as well. Fantastic job. Yeah, it's hard to believe. I mean, the day just cranks by, and we've got so much information and content to cover. But at this time, we are about to head back out to center stage. Danny McGinnis, our VP of Product Management for the Compute BU, is going to take a look at how Cisco is modernizing our data center for AI. We're going to send it out to center stage. We're headed there in about 7 seconds. We'll meet you right back here in the broadcast studio as soon as we are done. Enjoy, and away we go.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? We're working? All right. Welcome to Cisco Live. Thank you very much for being here this week. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us, and I hope the show is working out well for you. My name is Danny McGinnis. I run product management here at Cisco for our compute business unit. So all our UCS servers, Intersight, things like that, all come out of our team. in this session, I thought we'd take a step back a little bit. We talk a lot about products at Cisco Live. Thought we'd take a little step back and talk about kind of our own AI journey and what we've been through here as a company at Cisco and how Cisco IT has kind of helped to handle that. I know you think of us as a technology provider or a technology vendor, but very similar to your company, we have HR departments, IT departments, legal departments, manufacturing, supply chain, so very similar to probably what all of you have. And then we have lines of business, right? So we have everybody competing or trying to be competitive against our competition, and so trying to build the next best application. So in 2025, what's the most universal thing that pretty much everyone turns to have either that competitive edge or to drive efficiencies? It's AI, right? You can't be in 2025 and not look at AI. So anyway, we're going to take a step back and kind of talk to you about what that journey's look like across the company. So everybody's seen these slides, right? I don't think you can be at Cisco Live or any other technology conference and not talk about how we know AI is disrupting the market. And I think when we think about what does that mean to us, right? I mean, AI is innovating at a pace or changing at a pace that we've never witnessed. I mean, this is probably the most exciting time you could be in IT in terms of the amount of change that you will face and the innovation that you will face at this moment. But, all right, let's kind of put it in perspective. So AI or machine learning, right, it's been around for decades. I mean, we've been doing fraud detection or product recognition or making decisions inside of our Netflix accounts for years. So this has existed for quite some time. ChatGPT comes on the scene at the end of 2022, and in just 2 short years, pretty much every one of us are talking to agents on a daily basis, whether that's through help centers, on our phones. So, I mean, just think of that pace, if that puts it in perspective. Decades, 2 years. So just imagine where we'll be in 1 year, 2 years. All right, so that's complex, right? And that means that the back end is complex to us, to the ones that have to actually build it and keep it up and make it work. It's kind of like this analogy that I started using. It's like we're building a brand new car that flies, and we're also redesigning the road at the same time. That's a lot to have happen. And we really don't know where the car is going to be allowed to fly or how it's going to fly. So we're trying to figure these out at the same time, too. We're rethinking everything. Power, infrastructure, cooling, new applications, what the network's going to look like, this whole brand new ecosystem that we're contending with at the same time. The thing about AI is, like, we tend to just say AI. And for those of you that maybe are starting to dip your toes in the water or maybe further along, is that what we're quickly recognizing that AI is not the same for everybody. It's vastly different in the terms of what it can do and what it requires. On one end of the spectrum, you have those that are actually building and training their own models. We're doing that here at Cisco. Not all of you in the enterprise will necessarily do that. And then you've got, on the other end of that, you're taking existing models, you're injecting your own data with things that we call like fine-tuning and RAG, and then ultimately we're using them with mechanisms like inferencing that we talk about. So that in itself is pretty complex, right? Because for us to understand that and properly size for it and make sure that we have the right infrastructure, there's knowledge. There's new knowledge that we have to learn and figure out. The other interesting thing is the dynamic of the personas. All of us in this room, everyone at this conference in some form or fashion has kind of been now become sitting at the center of an AI technology decision. So our traditional enterprise IT and networking teams have new sets of challenges, but now there's these new personas. There's lines of business, data scientists, AI practitioners that all have become very relevant in what this ecosystem or outcome needs to look like. And that ultimately means that there needs to be a bridge between these teams. Right? There's no more, yes, we'll stand up an infrastructure environment and then they will come and be serviced on it. This is a very collaborative initiative that needs to take place in order to provide an AI outcome for a company. And so for the next few minutes here, I'm going to kind of take you on what that journey sort of looked like at Cisco. So as I mentioned, right, we have lines of business, our security line of business, my compute line of business, AppD, pretty much every product you see here comes out of a line of business. And then we've got our legal teams, our HR team. So imagine if I took this room and I divided it into these 6 quadrants. Okay, so just imagine you're kind of in groups with the handful of people, 3/3 on this side, 3/3 on this side. And imagine that we were all going to go camping for the first time. I don't know, I just picked a random hobby, camping. I've never gone camping before. I'm just going to make an assumption that none of you have gone camping before. Imagine all the things you have to learn. You have to learn how to survive outside, potentially some new survival skills. You'd have to learn how to cook, so there's things that you'd have to buy or bring with you. Sleep, probably tents you'd want to go buy, sleeping bags, it's going to be cold out there. First aid skills for kids, so that's a lot, right? We're all like trying to learn this at the same time. This group has to learn it, this group, 6 groups all learning the same thing. Imagine that's the 6 teams up here all learning the same thing at the same time. Would it be done the same throughout? No. Somebody would have a different theory on sleeping bags and tents than this team would. It's very inefficient, is the point that I'm making. There's a lot of redundancy in what we had to learn. But imagine if I create a center of excellence over here, and that team starts to figure these out, sleeping, eating, first aid, survival, and they can share that information with the whole team, and you trust them. You know it's been selected. That would actually be a lot more efficient way to get things done. And so at Cisco, our approach to this is we started to see each one of these teams each come up with their own unique AI requirement, new chatbot, new application that they want to develop. You start to realize really quickly that if we don't get some guardrails around this and start to do some unification, that this can get out of control pretty quick. We'd have very different security requirements, very different set of requirements in terms of infrastructure and how that infrastructure would be stood up. Okay, so this comes back to you. And probably one of the biggest takeaways I can share with anyone that's sitting on the IT side of the house, which most people that come to Cisco Live are. Right now, every one of those departments in your company is looking, I can guarantee with a high degree of confidence, at some level of an AI use case in their environment. Everybody. And eventually, they're going to become real enough that they're going to come your way, and you're going to have to support them. So imagine if every department in your company is coming up with its own unique architecture, its own unique security posture, its own unique set of applications, GPU requirements, et cetera, and that all gets dumped on you in the years to come. How do you operate it? How do you secure it? How do you scale it? Every one of those. You've worked so hard to unify your architecture so you could actually provide decent SLAs back to the business, we hope. And so anyway, this was really what kind of set us on the journey to say, look, we have to unify this. We have to have common centers of excellence, and we need to be able to provide this as an outcome or back to a service to all these different users and teams that require this capability. All right, so benefits, UI, why would we do this? So I think if you look at it from the financial perspective, it absolutely lowers your costs, creates an economies of scale, sets up savings in terms of like just how we staff, right? Just think about the example I used with camping. We were able to have a small team over here be beneficial to every other group in the company that did that. And so that's very similar to why you would want to unify and frankly, how you present yourselves as becoming relevant in this conversation. This is not easy. We're going camping. I hope that our families plan, or if my family's the one that decided we're going camping, I hope they planned it that we're going to go in a few months, because it takes time to learn all of these things. This is new. So if we start to create that centralized center of excellence, which is what we did, now you can decrease the learning curve. Not everybody has to go learn the same thing. I can have a team that really understands how to build infrastructure really well, how to build security posture really well, how to choose what models and applications we want to deploy really well and create some commonality around that. And then I think security is quickly becoming probably the most important. And last year, when we were at Cisco Live, AI, it was all about, okay, what do we do? It's exciting, it's new. Now that we're another year past, it's like, okay, cool, we got it. Everybody's on some kind of an AI trajectory, but security is quickly becoming the most important aspect and concern in terms of rolling it out at scale. And so when we think about like what did it look like for us and what does an AI-ready infrastructure look at, we kind of divided into like 4 big groups. So for us, it was 1, making sure that we have what we call unified AI clusters, right? So we've got pretty much a big Ethernet fabric with NVIDIA GPUs, and these are now deployed at scales. We're up to thousands of these at this point. There's an ops element to it, right? So being able to provide a pretty much what I'm sharing here is like we're getting to a common set of themes, right? So you need to have a set of infrastructure set up. Pretty much any of those AI use cases have some level of like analytics and correlation built into them that's a requirement. So now you're creating center of excellence to provide that skill rather than each of these groups trying to figure it out on their own. Chatbots. Every team, I'm going to talk to a second about our actual HR use case, but you'll see chatbots are kind of one of the most common requirements in terms of this early stage of AI that people want. Everyone wants to talk to an interface, right, or use an interface to provide human-like responses. And then lastly, service enhancement. So how can we think about like attack or a calling center, right? How do we actually do a better job of routing what your calls and what your caseloads look like? So these kind of became like a pervasive or common set of themes that we needed to start to solve for as a centralized IT group. So the thing that's important to understand about this is that it doesn't happen overnight. Similar to the example when I said, I hope my family doesn't want to go camping tomorrow because we would be in a world of trouble. This is a journey. And so, if you think about it as kind of this iterative cycle, right? You kind of have to go through this learning phase. If some of you have already been down this path, and you probably understand this, but there's a lot of research to do. Not only externally, the whole new ecosystem and set of vendors, but internally, we're trying to understand what we're actually trying to accomplish. Maybe trying to figure out, is there ROI? If we're going to invest X number of dollars, are we actually going to make some money in return on doing that investment? Is it worthwhile doing it? And then there's a planning period. So now we're getting into, the cost. What's the architecture need to look like? How long is it going to take to actually order the equipment if we want to start ordering it today, right? The problem that you start to have very quickly is that for every one of those lines of business, once they've decided that this is a real journey they're on, everybody wants it tomorrow. Well, if you haven't gone through a learning phase, and now you have an application that needs to be rolled out in a month, how can you achieve that? This is a lengthy process. And then ultimately, how are we going to use it? Not just the physical build and turning it all up, but we have to get it tested. We have to get it verified. Certainly, there's a security element that we're going to want to make sure that we've achieved before we're ready to roll this out at scale. And so this takes us some time. I mean, we've been on this journey now for quite some time internally, and then it's iterative. You're constantly learning, you're constantly planning, you're constantly implementing, because there's new sets of requirements coming at you pretty much around the clock. The other thing that you'll notice is that if you're early in this journey, it doesn't stop with one application, right? It continues to ramp. Like once it kind of catches on, it sort of spreads like wildfire in terms of what the use cases need to look like and how we're going to implement. So this is sort of what one of our AI clusters look like. I didn't want to get too technical or too deep in this session, but it gets pretty complex pretty quick. So this is 32 nodes of an NVIDIA 8 GPU cluster. So this would be like our HGX boxes that we just rolled out. So just for 32 of those nodes, you basically build on a 400 gig network on the back end. So it's a non-blocking compute fabric, leaf and spine topology, and that's providing you GPU to GPU connectivity, right? And then you've got your north-south network to attach your storage, and then as well as to get your users access to it, right, through your north-south. So we always think of east-west inside the data center, but when you talk about some of these large AI networks, east-west kind of refers to GPU to GPU, and north-south starts to refer to how your users come inbound in the data center. So it gets pretty complex pretty quick if you think about the amount of infrastructure it takes to stand up just 256 GPUs. All right, so let's talk about, I mentioned a bunch of different departments. Let's talk a little bit about, we call it people and communities. At Cisco is essentially our HR department. So one of the applications that I was alluding to, so think of this as one of the 6 groups. This is a year ago. This is March of 24. I mean, even before then, we were creating the idea of it. But they come to Cisco IT and they're like, hey, We want to build a chatbot. We need an agent so that all Cisco employees, think about it, 100,000 Cisco employees can get access to our HR databases in a different way. We don't want them to have to search in the traditional way they've always been. We want a chatbot so they can get their questions answered and things like that. Sure, Cisco IT says, great, let's get started. What do we have in terms of infrastructure? Cisco IT says, good, we've already figured out how to build this infrastructure. We know what the stack should look like. The diagram I just showed you, that becomes your reference architecture. Rather than every team, every 6 group building their own, we've already got that figured out. Awesome. Now we're going to start moving into planning, development. This is timely. Think about this is your HR database. I mean, this is some sensitive information you have access to. What happens if I can get access to my peers' financial records? This isn't like I log into a system and we have traditional role-based access so they know, hey, Danny's only got access to Danny's stuff. This is now we're talking about a whole new set of applications go front. It gets quite complex pretty fast, and there's a lot of planning and a lot of testing and a lot of validation that goes into this. So anyway, you go through a testing and validation phase of it to make sure that everything I just said works, and then general availability. That journey, and the reason I'm emphasizing this, is about a year, and we're going from March of 24. This one particular application rolls out in April of 25. So this is a real use case that Cisco has gone through with a team of people that have learned. Like we've created that center of excellence to be able to do this, and you're still at this kind of timing. So anyway, I share this for you to kind of get an idea. The point that I always try to help when I'm talking to our customers and to our partners is the time is now for you to insert yourself into these conversations. You should be relevant. You should be collaborating with those lines of business, with the data scientists, with the people that have the AI projects. Because if not, it will be too late, and you will redo this journey over again. All right, so some challenges, right? Infrastructure, everything I was just talking about. We have to figure out what infrastructure we're going to buy. Network, how do we do, this is new, how do we build a lossless, low latency at this kind of speed? 400 gig network, this is intense. And then all the storage associated with it. We're getting into new types of storage requirements. But that's just like the basic stuff. Now start looking into like the data volume that we're dealing with, connecting to multiple data sources at the same time, and thinking about the security element of the users that are inferencing it, asking for it. New stacks. Do I have the right IT automation and observability capabilities so that these are 24/7 networks? There is no downtime in an agent that a global company has to interact with. Cybersecurity is, like I said, is becoming one of the #1 concerns at this point in terms of turning up these new types of applications. Anyway, you can see some of the other things here. I mean, the point is it's endless and it requires a fair amount of planning. So this has really been a big journey for our teams. All right, so some stuff we learned a little bit along the way. So if we think about the technology side, right, it's very, very important to understand what the use case is, but more important to define it and refine it, and make sure that we have clear guidelines on what we're trying to deliver, for whom, by when. A common operating model is critical. Like I said, if we all tried to go on our own and do our own research for that camping use case, well, we're all going to do it a little bit of a different way. There is no best practice. There's no learning. This group doesn't learn from that group, and they don't share that information. Creating centers of excellence really help you to continuously learn and get better. And by the way, it's not like it's foreign. I mean, this is what you've been doing in IT for many, many decades. But now with this new kind of AI kind of shaking things up the way that it is, it's kind of the paradigm's being changed a little bit. Right-sizing the AI infrastructure is critical. There can be so much, I can't tell you how many customers I know make investments because almost there's a fear, right? I don't know how many GPUs I'm going to need. I don't know how to size. You guys have been sizing virtualized, bare metal, VDI applications. You've gotten probably so good at that you don't even think about it anymore. But this is brand new. So how do you protect your investments in a way that you don't undersize so that you can hit the performance that you need, but at the same time you don't throw money out the window by oversized boxes that frankly are really hard to get and become very expensive when that's not what you really need to support the application that you have. So that's really good, is getting good and understanding the sizing. And then on the people side, it's kind of like what I talked about, right? The learning and the skills, it's iterative. We learn we plan, we get new requirements, we learn some more, and these all become foundational building blocks and skills that we need to have, but then we can repurpose and share. The relationship building, as I spent time talking to Cisco IT about what this journey looked like, I think the relationship building became one of the most important elements of it. The IT teams and the DevOps teams and the application owners really understanding each other and talking a common language is critical. From the customer side, I mean, most of you have been dealing, we went through, it used to be networking and security and servers and virtualization could all kind of work in their own little silos. But I'd say over the last 5 or 10 years, security, we've all kind of worked to get better together, right? We realized that that was the only way to scale and to be efficient, to be effective. And so we've done a good job within IT, I think, collaborating amongst ourselves and bringing those silos together. But now my suggestion to you is, and based out on what we've learned, is that you have to bring in the rest of the company. They're important in this decision, more than they ever have been. And frankly, this gives you an opportunity, as the IT personnel or the IT team, to insert yourself and be more relevant early on, because these are the problems that are going to come up. And so I highly recommend making this driving this awareness into your leadership teams so that you are inserting yourself earlier, not waiting for it to get thrown over the fence. All right, so I think from kind of bringing it back a little bit to my world or on the infrastructure side, how have we kind of participated in helping out in some of these centers of excellence? So for us, it obviously starts at having a full portfolio that's ready for, the infrastructure that is ready for AI or AI-ready infrastructure. And I think you know us well enough to know we have a full lineup of switching capabilities, our own silicon, networking devices, servers, software, applications to help you modernize your data centers and be ready for the space. The one thing that I often talk about when we think about being AI ready, many of you may not even have an AI project that has started inside your environment yet. You may be thinking about it, you may be planning for it, you may be learning, you're in an event like this trying to get better education or better information. The one thing that I think you can be doing now, even if there's not a single AI use case that you have to deal with today, is thinking about what the operating model needs to look like when and if you do. So for us, we don't differentiate in the way we operate, whether it's an AI workload or a traditional workload. We just think about it as a workload. And so what we do with our management tools like Nexus Dashboard or Intersight, we very much take the mindset of a workload is a workload, but it should be universal. You shouldn't have this AI thing that hangs off in the core of your data center that is not operated to all the same levels of automation and operational efficiency that you've achieved in your traditional environment. And we'll stay true and continue to design to that. The other thing that as a company we've really worked hard at, and some of you are probably familiar with our concept of a Cisco validated design. So we spend a lot of time, obviously, thinking about what we want to build, what our roadmap should look like, who we want to be to you, to our customers. But then we also think about who we don't want to be, and that means that you have to think about who your ecosystem should be and who are the right partners, because clearly we're only one part of a very vast ecosystem inside the data center. And so some of the key brands, obviously, are the partners that you know so well. We spend a lot of time not just working on business partnerships together, but working on our technical partnerships together, with the goal of handing you a validated solution that you know works and giving you single throat to choke so that you have a place to call when you get stuck or when something goes wrong, so that we can kind of manage this on the back end. The concept of, if you don't know what a Cisco validated design, real quick, think of it as a very lengthy document, sometimes upwards of 300 pages. But what it's doing is it's being validated in a lab for months and months and then continuous maintenance, so that once you get this infrastructure that you're about to order, you have an actual tested design that you can go deploy and install with automation scripts available to you, Ansible libraries, so that you can use to automate to our specs. So not only do we show you how to configure, but we show you all the performance and the testing and the validation that we did, so you kind of have that as your starting point. And then you can now do last mile customization on top of it. With AI, this has gotten even more complex. when you think about the stack, it's not just your storage, your networking, your compute, your services. Now we're getting into containers, and we're even working the way up into what that application and LLMs actually need to look like that are installed in your environment. And so for the last year and a half, we've really doubled down in terms of our solution work and our validated designs that we've done so that you have these at your fingertips to start deploying immediately. Then we took that one step further and we're like, okay, cool, it's great. We gave you this big, long document, but it's still complex, right? There's a lot of combinations. If you start thinking about this stack, right? You've got all your automation tools, you've got your storage, you've got your networking, you've got your compute, you've got your management tools. Now we get into some containers level, and now we get into actually the models that we need to roll out. This is a lot. So we've actually packaged this all up for you, and now we give you single SKUs to order. So you'll see what we call AI pods. So you have inferencing AI pods based on different things. Hey, I want to roll out have a RAG inferencing use case for, 13 billion parameter llama model. Great. Here's a stack. This is what we recommend. We've already tested it. We've already validated it. We know it scales to this. This is what you should buy. We've done the processor selection, the memory selection, the drive selection. We've helped you choose your software stack. And it's backed up by a CVD that you know exactly how to configure this. As you get up the stack, it sort of becomes like a house of cards. There's a lot of things that all have to match at the same time in terms of firmware, in terms of architectures. And so we've really worked hard to simplify this so that you can hit the ground running and focus on the more important piece, which is making this have like an application on it ready to go for your developer community. And then the thing that we're kind of complementing that with, so after you get through that first phase, the blank canvas, where do I get started, and you roll out your first set of apps, the next questions start to happen. All right, well, how many concurrent users am I going to have in my environment? What kind of latency is tolerable in my environment? What type of GPUs do I want to have? I'm going to train a model. Is it okay if I train it in months, or do I need to train it in a week? That really dictates the type of architecture or the hardware that you might throw at that problem. And so with that, we've been working pretty hard. This is about a year's worth of work that we're getting ready to roll out now. But it's a set of advisory tools to help you bring in intake questions and data from your environments, things you might bring to your application teams, things I would have brought to my HR team in the example that I just shared with you and say, hey, let's talk about it. How many people do you expect to be using this application simultaneously? How much data do you think we're going to need to store? And then once that happens, now I can give you better recommendations on how to properly size your environment. This is really important. Kind of comes back to the example that I used earlier. And like, how do we not throw money out the door, but how do we also know that we're provisioned to sufficiently support the applications and the lines of business that are, depending on you to deliver this service? So anyway, this will be available here pretty soon. Probably in the next 2 months, we'll have this ready to go. So with that, if you think about what that AI stack needs to look like, right? We've got this combination of networking and compute and security, observability tools and beyond. And so I think this positions Cisco obviously really well to be able to support you and help you be ready as you start to venture a little bit more into this space. So with that, how do we take action? Be thinking about what you need, have very good conversations with your lines of business and your application owners so that you can help understand what they're going to require so that you can build an infrastructure. But think about the importance of the commonality of it. Identify your infrastructure needs. We have an AI readiness assessment. If you're interested in taking that, that's available to you today. And then make strategic decisions about your investments, right? Learn about what we've done with our validated designs and start to look at some of the sizing tools and things that we're making available to you in the months to come. And we think this really helps put you on your way to being able to be a little bit ahead of the game in terms of providing this and making you really relevant and successful in this space. So anyway, with that, thank you very much for taking the time out of this week to spend a half hour with me. It was great seeing you, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us here on the live stream, coming to you from the RAI in Amsterdam, bringing you every single moment of Cisco Live 2025. We are just back from another great center stage session with Danny McGinnis, our VP of Product Management from the Compute BU. Danny took a look at all of the different ways that Cisco has been modernizing our data centers for AI. As AI is continuing to transform all of our industry systems, right out there at the forefront at Cisco, we're modernizing data centers in order to meet the evolving demands of AI workloads. But this isn't really just about modernization. Cisco IT also has to reimagine its role, and it partners with our Cisco business units to power Gen AI programs in AI innovation. It's all very exciting, and there's so far to go and so much to learn. We're going to have Danny here in the studio for an interview in just a couple of minutes. Right now, though, we will head out to Rob at the networking product wall. Hey there, Rob.
Hey, man. How's it going over there?
Good, good. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you.
Danny McGinnis, sharp guy. That's going to be a good one.
Absolutely. Looking forward
and
to it.
very much, of course, on topic here. We're talking about UCS. I want to introduce Hasib. Hasib, we were just kind of reconnecting. It's been a little bit of a while since we last spoke, but you got some new products in UCS. Specifically, now we're in the AI-ready data center, but here we've got the UCS, I'm forgetting the numbers all of a sudden, 848?
845A.
845. 845. Okay, now this one is a new modular UCS, but I wonder if you could tell us what makes this unique and perhaps a complement to the more pure speed and AI focus that we had with the 885. If you could kind of talk about how those are the same, but how they're different.
All right, thanks, Rob. So this is what we announced this Tuesday in the keynote. This is the Cisco UCS C845A, codename Mustang. This is our 4RU modular AI server. This server in this very small form factor can actually take up to 8 GPUs. But the nice thing about this server is that you can build as you grow. So you can order the server with 2 GPUs, 4 GPUs, 6 GPUs, or 8 GPUs. The server runs on 2 AMD EPYC 5 5th generation Turin processors. The memory, the hard disk, the on-device storage, they're all configurable. Customers can pick and choose. So there's a lot of configurability on this particular design. Comes with 4 power supplies. One of them is redundant, so it's like a 3+1 configuration. It can handle east-west traffic using 4 AI NICs. It also has 1 slot for a north-south traffic. You can use a DPU or an AI NIC over there of your choice.
No, well, I was going to ask you just as a point of comparison, real quick. The 885 is where here, so we can kind of see how that difference. I didn't tell you I was going to do that. Sorry. Where's the 885? Which one?
This
there
one.
we go. Okay.
So now we're coming down to the big boy, the 885A. So this one is, as you can see, that's a 4RU. This is an 8RU server. The server actually ends here. What we're showing here is we've pulled out the GPU tray. So the thing about this server is it comes in one fixed configuration when it comes down to GPUs. Okay. So it's modular in the sense that you can pick and choose your processors, processor speeds, memory, etc. But you will always order it with 8 GPUs. And they will come in this tray. We offer NVIDIA GPUs, H100s, H200s. We also offer AMD GPUs in this. Okay. And these 8 GPUs are all connected through a high-speed interconnect inside the tray. So which means their communication, GPU to GPU communication is much faster. We also have 8 AI NICs here, 1 per GPU. So when this server needs to talk to another server, every GPU has 400 gigs today, and in future it would have about 800
Well, and that's the hard part, right? Which is these things need to communicate, because this thing is really a beast dedicated to the training and inference type of heavy usage, high power draw. You've got very specific things you need to accomplish. You're not going to use this for anything general purpose, but there are still needs for, hey, I need a little bit of that, but I also need to be able to repurpose, perhaps. I need to be able to run different workloads, and that's where the new one just announced with the 848?
845.
I'm never going to get those numbers right suddenly under the pressure of this job. But that one is designed for the flexibility that this one doesn't have, but I could see you're going to buy that one, you're going to stack those up as much as you can get away with, I guess.
Correct. This one is for training workload.
Yep.
It will give you the best performance. So, for example, if this was a Formula 1 racing, this is what you were going to go in that racing with, right? It will always deliver at the best speed. That one is built as you grow. Customers might not have enough power, they might not have enough cooling, whatever. That's where they can start over there. They might not even need 8 GPUs, right? And they don't want to spend that much money. So they can start with 2 GPUs and build it as they go along. So slightly different use cases. That one can also be used for training, but the way this one one can work in the training would always be superior to the way that one can work on training.
So are you finding that customers are really looking for these kind of pre-validated, proven solutions where we've already kind of solved or provide very kind of tight constraints on the stuff that we know how to do well, and they want to be as close to turnkey and that type of thing as possible? Is that really where this is fitting in?
You got it, actually. So one of the biggest challenges of AI is that there are so many different versions of softwares and drivers you have to worry about. What Cisco does is we just don't provide you the hardware. We actually have a solution aspect to it. We test them in the lab. We make sure that we give you a blueprint. So if you follow that blueprint from the first page to the last page, you would have an infrastructure where you can download the models using Hugging Face or whatever you're using and be able to run it very quickly.
I like that. And of course, there's in the sustainability booth, we've been talking about immersion, cooling, and all the different things where we have to get creative with the fact that these things have such density that the power needs and the cooling needs that they have are something that our regular data centers aren't always prepared to handle, so the calculus just becomes a lot different in these solutions. But I like the way we can now eliminate a lot of the guesswork in as many places as we can, so that seems to be what we're pushing for.
So this model is air-cooled. Both these models are air-cooled. But we are looking into the liquid cooling as well. We brought the immersion cooling, so thanks for that. So the future models, when the GPUs get to 1,000 watts, you wouldn't need liquid cooling. Today, with the 600, 700 watt GPUs, we can do air cooling very efficiently.
Okay, good. Yeah, good. Any final points about what we should be looking for when it comes to UCS?
Well, UCS, these are the only two servers we talked about, but we have a whole bunch of other UCS servers. X series, it supports GPUs. We're coming out with new innovations on the X series as well. So we're giving customers choice, right? You can start with as little as 2 very small GPUs, medium-sized GPUs, large GPUs, all the way up to the 8 GPU server, which you can use in your training model.
I'm at the edge of my knowledge here, but do we support TPUs?
These ones are mostly GPUs.
Okay, I knew I was pushing it with that one. But what I like though is you're not just saying, it's not just about the NVIDIA H100s, there's support for the AMD GPUs as well. So it's nice to see some options in the market because this is how we're going to do things as more cost effectively, focused on the things we need to achieve.
We just left one vendor, which is Intel. We do support Intel on our X series. So we work with all the GPU vendors.
Yeah. Any other points you want to make?
No, I'm good.
That's awesome.
Unless you guys
Hasib? Yeah, no, thank you very much. Guys, I encourage you to come by the booth. Again, we're at the AI-ready data center area. You can come in here and get hands-on with everything from the optics technologies to what's your UCS flavor of choice. There's no reason to have questions with so many smart people here to answer these questions for you. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Steve in the studio.
Rob, thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate it. Thanks to Hasib as well. I can't believe we actually reached the edge of Rob Boyd's knowledge. I didn't know there was one, but I guess we just achieved it. I don't know. I still don't believe it. Glad to have you back with us here in the studio. As promised, we've got Daniel McGinnis with us, fresh off of a fantastic center stage presentation. We're going to continue that conversation around modernizing our data centers to meet the evolving demands of AI workloads. And Daniel has brought in a great guest with us here from NVIDIA. So Daniel, I'm going to send it over to you on the other side of the studio.
All right, thank you very much for the handoff. Yep, just came off the stage, and I got my buddy Marty over here with me from NVIDIA, so we thought we'd do just a quick session here. So Marty, thanks for being here, obviously. Thanks for being the partner that you guys are. NVIDIA has quickly become probably the most interesting partner we've got.
Thank you.
Very fast. So, Marty, you know, one of the things, like obviously we talk about GPUs all the time. Like, I think everybody's heard enough about GPUs. NVIDIA's got a pretty important layer relevance in the software stack too, right? You're almost kind of like a two sandwiches of the infrastructure layer, the most components within the box, and then also the layer on top that's helping really enable developers. Talk to us a little bit about what your guys are doing there with NVIDIA.
Oh, absolutely. So thank you for having me.
Welcome.
It's interesting, Danny, the GPU actually turns out, as CEO said this once, the GPU by itself is just a brick until a developer comes along and does something with it.
Yeah.
So how does a developer actually do something with a software stack? So there is a very rich software stack which actually is built on top of your software stack. So you got sort of you build the AI data center, then you have the management operation layer, and then beyond that, get the developers to do something with it. So you're going to hear a lot about agentic AI here. I'm going to talk about that. So how do you actually go do that work? That's based on that NVAIE stack. We built the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software, which is available on your stack. So developers can go and use what we call these NVIDIA Inference Microservices, NIMs or NIMs, download that, run that, and that's really how they develop. I mean, so when you hear about AI, that's what they're doing with the software, and that's how they're using the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Very rich layer in the middle, like you described.
All right, so you said it, agentic. I think if I was, you know how you put a new word in the Webster's dictionary every once in a while? Like, I think this is the one where I even hear people getting tongue-tied on agentic.
That's right.
So, you know, obviously we've been training models, we've been building models, people, you know, IT teams are getting stuff stood up. Talk to me a little bit about what's changed more recently in terms of how we're actually using them and maybe demystify this word agentic.
That's a great question. So just quickly, let's kind of contextualize for the audience. So where we're coming from or where we're going. So if you recall, about 10 years ago, there was this thing called AlexNet, ImageNet competition, which these students won with GPU, recognizing images with less than 25% error rate. And that's really what kicked off this era of what we call perceptive AI, being able to perceive things and objects. And then from there, ChatGPT comes along. And that kicked off the era of generative AI, right? So to be able to generate new things, not just recognize things, but generate things. And that then further propelled the era of agentic AI, when you can ask an agent to do something or some things, and it can orchestrate all of that based on top of the ability to generate things. So when I ask an agent, hey, how did I do, you know, in the last 5 years, you know, or 5 quarters, revenue-wise, and how did I compare to my competition? Well, that agent has to go do a whole bunch of search. They have to go into the company database. They have to do a whole bunch of calculation, and all that is captured, let's call it, within the agentic AI framework. That's what you would do with an agent, and that's where we are today.
That's where we are. We went from, you know, making Netflix recommendations to logging in ChatGPT, and now we're in full Knox having conversations with people that sound like computers that sound like humans.
Absolutely. And the way to think about this, Dan, is every person that works in the enterprise is going to need some help or can have an assistant of some sort. You may need it for product marketing, I may need it for sales, and developers will need, and so on and so forth. So the enterprise is going to experience huge productivity gains, have this agentic AI framework.
Literally, that's one of the things I was just talking about in my session. You know, every single line of business in Cisco is at that point now where they're thinking about what's that agent look like for a Cisco employee, and it's pretty much what every enterprise is going through.
Is that exactly right?
Yeah.
I mean, I use agentic AI today inside of NVIDIA. We have an agent, we call it Sassy, and effectively, if I want to build a presentation to go talk to a customer, it would take me hours if I build it. So I just asked Sassy, hey, could you build me for this customer this kind of content? And it takes maybe 5 minutes.
Oh, it's amazing. And the thing is, without having that, you would be behind because everybody else is doing it that way. So if you don't embrace this and adopt it, your company quickly starts to fall behind in terms of productivity capabilities.
You got it. It's a blockbuster Netflix thing.
All right, so
keep moving.
You and I, we spend a lot of time talking about the strategy, the partnership, and I think, you know, we clearly see why it's such a match. I often talk about, or one of the things you and I often talk about, is the different personas, right? Cisco, obviously, we know that IT team so well. Yep. But NVIDIA, when you think about who you're out aligning with usually on your initial calls, it's not the IT team, it's the line of business. So talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing there and how that kind of parlays into the partnership and why this is such a, you know, better together type of match.
Well, Cisco is a great partner for us because of your expertise in the enterprise and with Ethernet specifically. So your expertise in enterprise, Ethernet, and the infrastructure, on top of that, we layer the GPU computing model.
Yep.
And we've always had relationships with developers. We have a very strong developer framework. So we go out and talk to developers throughout the year about AI and AI models. And once they're ready to go do some work, we are typically, we're sort of training them, coaching them. Well, it actually comes to the implementation. The way this was going to work is, Danny, is you guys will be talking to the enterprise, and then right behind you will be our team. So you set the framework with the IT team, and then when it comes to talking to the developers and line of businesses, we will go together and tell them why it makes a lot of sense. Because it's just not about developing or deploying. It's about developing securely, deploying it securely, developing on the right network, making sure it's resilient. All those things matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
that's what we see.
Likewise, and I think as we kind of about to close this out, I think for us, you know, I often talk about this, like we spent the last 5 years or 10 years kind of like the server teams and the networking teams and the security teams all got better at talking to each other. But now these teams need to get better at talking to the developers and talking to the application owners because it's so intertwined at this point.
Absolutely.
And I think with what you've done with your software stack and really made that become so prevalent and available, that's the glue that we're seeing between those two worlds right
Completely agree.
Yeah.
The last comment I would make is, what's going to happen is we're going to start the conversation at the line of business level.
Yes.
With the developers, and that's going to drive the consumption of the infrastructure, which is going to come from you.
And IT should be having a stack that's ready to support that,
Completely.
so they all meet together very nicely.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Well
all
said.
right. Oh man, thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
All right, Danny, Marty, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Fantastic conversation. Excellent content here as well. And as Marty runs by, he's there in the background. I'm going to point him out anyway. Thank you for the great partnership with NVIDIA. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for being here with us today. Great job, man. Okay, we're going to continue the conversation now. We're going to move into a fantastic customer success story specifically around IP Fabric. I have got Jacob Al-Nasir here with me, head of central marketing for IP Fabric. Jacob, thank you for jumping on in and being a part of this conversation here today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And then we've got Sebastian Darguv, lead solution architect EMEA for IP Fabric as well. Sebastian, welcome. Glad to have you here in the studio.
Very glad as well. Thank you.
I don't know how both of you got away and managed to get in here for a little conversation time, but we're going to take advantage of it. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about Roma Airport here at this point to be able to bring this story specifically to life, right? All right, so we've heard that Roma Airport has been using IP Fabric to solve a number of different challenges that they've had, including ensuring more accurate network documentation, better compliance. It hasn't always been automated, which is interesting. So what have they been doing up until this point? Surely that automation is something that's a widespread requirement for so many of our customers, right?
And you wish it was like that, but unfortunately this is the reality. It's like, it's a lot of manual work for them, but for many of the other customers that we have, where it's still a lot of manual effort. People are going to do sometimes, if you're lucky, they're going to have scripting capabilities, but those scripts, they're just heavy maintenance that they have to keep on updating, keeping up to date is what the challenge is. So despite sometimes it looks like it's automated, but it's not, because those heavy processes make that the data collection is very inaccurate. And that's what we are seeing, I would say, widespread for them, but other customers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it almost seems like a given. It seems like something natural that we would just be there by now. Yet here we are still talking about how do we bring everybody into that fold, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is something we see time and time again when we're working with, customers or potential customers. I mean, we've had instances where we're doing proof of concepts with a customer. We deploy the product in their environment, and suddenly they're finding out that they've got devices in that environment that aren't necessarily where they should be, aren't set up correctly, or in some rare cases, just didn't even know those devices were there, right? And those are huge gaps to have in the knowledge of running infrastructure in a network that you're depending on to support and underpin your business, right? And, in terms of compliance, we see the same thing there. We've had situations where a customer will think, I know what's in my network, I know I'm compliant, I know my, hardware has all the latest firmware, and I know where it's located, and etc. And then suddenly you get into a POC and you find out there's bits and bobs all over the place, because you get a lot of drift, right? And managing something as complex as an enterprise network is just not an easy task.
Not at all, not at all. Let's go back to the IP Fabric side on this, right? So we know what it can do. You can get much more accurate, much more rapid network data. We can apply that, of course, to other teams, other use cases as well. Full network automation, for example. What are you hearing directly from customers? What do they want? How do they want to utilize this capability?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of examples of this that's around things like, for example, source of truth. We hear a lot about source of truth, and whether it's source of intended truth, which is, this is what my network should look like, this is what we expect it to look like to deliver services, or the source of truth of this is what it actually is. So in a lot of cases, they may have both of those. And really, in terms of managing that source of truth, it's sharing data across teams, as you mentioned yourself. That data is relevant not just for a network team, it's relevant for infrastructure, for troubleshooting teams within service, ServiceNow or ticketing systems, or first line, second level, troubleshooting. But also, it's relevant in terms of like your whole automation strategy, where you kind of need three things for that to work. You need to be able to orchestrate, fulfill, but assure. You need to know if what you've done is delivering the result that you intended, and that's kind of where IP Fabric comes in.
Absolutely. Sebastian, let me come over to you on that same idea. What are you hearing directly from your customers? What are they saying to you? What do they want from us? What do they need from us? What is the story that we can share with them?
So the first thing that they need is they need to free their engineer time. They need more time to provide the added value that the engineers are there to do, and not just to do the recurring tasks that are very time consuming. So now talking about some of the use cases, I know, Jake, you mentioned the troubleshooting. And this is the thing where troubleshooting, when you don't have accurate information, it's going back to the accuracy of the data. If you don't have it, you're going to spend a lot of time, waste that time trying to search for something where you just don't know how to find it. And we see the same from a change management perspective. So now if we look at the automation, it's like, how do you validate your source of truth? If the source of truth should be the holy grail, it's like, this is where all the data that is there should be exactly matching what you've got in your network. But again, we rarely see that because your network is constantly going to be changing. The network team is there to provide changes to the business. We need to add the value, help the business growth. And you can't do that if you don't change, otherwise you're just going to stay where you are.
It's an important point. You started out by saying it's the ideal versus the real, right? That adaptability is a great sense of reality. Every customer is going to be different. Every network, every environment is going to be different. The demand from each customer is going to be different. So agility becomes a big piece of this puzzle, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and yeah, so and you know, this is something where having the right product ecosystem that's relevant to solve the what you're trying to solve for a specific instance or company is so important. And I think that's why strong partnerships are so important, right? For example, with Cisco, working together to deliver a solution that solves that customer's problem in a way that's most relevant for them.
Right, letting them know what is available to them, because a lot of times they just don't know what that availability looks like. So it sounds pretty clear. So let's say you've got a digital network twin, right, with actionable network data plus an accurate map. It seems to be such a no-brainer, again, from a network and a technical perspective, right? But how have your customers been able to translate that directly into better business value? How have they performed?
Yeah, so I think for that is really when you start changing the mindset, where currently the way a lot of companies do it is we're starting from being very reactive. You wait for the phone to ring to someone complaining, saying that doesn't work anymore or it's not working the way it should. And when you start changing that to say, how can we do things better? And to do things better, you've got to start being more proactive. I want to be able to understand the network better. So once I've got the data that's going to show me how things actually work, I can actually be proactively thinking, oh, I've seen something that's not good in the network. Luckily, maybe it hasn't affected anyone yet. But if I can change and fix my resiliency before it becomes an outage, then the business is not going to scream, and then I've solved the problem before it became one.
That's a good point. Yeah, add on top of that, Jake. I can tell you've got some thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's an interesting one because it comes back to what you guys were discussing at the beginning, and Seb was saying about, you know, these are tasks that we'd expected to be automated ages ago, right? And, you know, we know that resources aren't always abundant, especially within network or ICT teams. They're expected to deliver a lot, usually in short spaces of time with tight resource constraints, right? So this is where something like IP Fabric and a tool that can take and automate a lot of what normally takes a long time is so powerful, because you're freeing up the time of these network teams and other teams to actually work on projects that then drive business or drive expansion and growth of that business, which at the end of the day is effectively what we're all right there for.
So how do we kick off the next set of conversations with clients, with customers, to let them know not only what IP Fabric can do for them, but to show them these great stories, to demonstrate for them what is possible, what's awaiting them? How do we get that going? How do we get them taking that first step?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I think this is where once they start realizing that they have hidden problems on the network, and it's the moment you realize that, yes, it could be better, but then it's like, how one tool is it going to help me? Is it really going to help me that much? And I think that we've got customers that really have said to us where something that the data that we provide, if we were trying to provide that ourselves, building our own script or our own mechanism to get that data, could take anything from 6 months to 1 year or multi-year project, where that same data is available within a few days of deploying the tool, and you already have that data available to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jake, you were starting to
Yeah,
say?
you know, I think it's one of those things where we see a lot of wow moments when customers, potential customers, see the product, right? Because it's one of those things, you're explaining something to them and they're kind of understanding what you're saying and they see the value, right? But they've been doing this thing the specific way for a long time. They may have tried other tools, they may have tried other platforms, tried in-house solutions, right? And they've potentially not resolved what they've wanted to. But then when you can sit them down in front of a platform and show them something valuable within 10 minutes of deploying it, that's really when those moments start hitting home about the potential that it can deliver, not just for that specific instance, but for a number of other projects and a number of other teams. So
fantastic, fantastic story. All right, I so appreciate Jake, Sebastian, both of you being with us here in the studio, bringing this story to us. Love to see what's going on with IP Fabric. I hope you come back and join us again and we can continue the conversation at that point.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen,
it's a pleasure.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are about to head into our next center stage presentation, a little under 4 minutes, but you know what? It looks like Rob is out there in the world of solutions out on the show floor. Oh, we're getting a beauty shot up there of the Cisco logo. That's great. Rob, let's send it out to you for, let's call it like 2.5 minutes or so.
Well, actually, I was hoping you and I could talk a little bit.
Oh, that's
because I
even
feel
better.
like we're at that stage of the day where we're doing a little bit of reflecting. And I haven't even had a chance. There's still a long list of things that I'd like to check out because we got all our Cisco stuff here on this side, and then we've got all our partner stuff on this side. So there, again, as I've been saying all week, there's no excuse for having unanswered questions, if you know what I mean. But I don't know, what are your feelings about how far the day's gone so far?
How far the day has gone? Well, look, we're 40 years of innovation. We have gone
Put
very,
those
very
words
far.
in the right order
You know,
for me.
it's interesting. I always say that one of the, I love being here in the studio. I get an opportunity to talk with phenomenal partners, hear from executives. I get to touch in on all of the center stage sessions. There's one thing I don't get to do. I don't get to do what the three of you get to do, which is to actually be out there amongst the people within our community, right? I mean, I've had a chance to do it in the past, but I am half envious of what it is that you get to do.
No, but you're like our Liam Neeson. You have a very specific set of skills that are required, and I could explain them to you, but it wouldn't make sense.
The Liam Neeson, that's a brand new one for me. Yeah, Liam Neeson. I don't know why Liam Neeson, but whatever. A special set of skills, I guess. I can go and hunt people down. So what I was going to say, Rob, is that the more I get an opportunity to talk with our partners out here, you're out there speaking with the partners, you're seeing what it is that they're doing, everything that we are able to deliver, and it goes show to show, event to event, whether we're in the US, we're in EMEA, we're in APJC, but every time we take a leap forward, I realize it's our partners driving us to deliver on what it is that their customers are telling them that they need. They turn around, they say it to us, they say, here is where we're still lacking, here's where the gaps are in our capability, and all of a sudden Cisco is able to come together and put together those edge-to-edge networking, data center, AI capabilities that all communicate and speak to one another. Nobody else can do that.
Well, and the thing that jumps out to me here, again, was you and I talked about this a little bit earlier, where it feels like, you know, there's a certain set of solutions that start to mature from what we saw last year, and then there's a new set that we're saying, well, I wonder how these are going to mature through. But I have to admit that when I arrived here, like coming into this week, I think there's good reason for this. You know, you have this, there's so much going on in technology, and the ground is shifting so fast that I may have come in here with a little bit more trepidation than usual. But I gotta say, I don't feel it now that I'm here. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It means that you're sensing confidence. We begin by talking, it's going to be all AI all the time, and we say, okay, what does that actually mean? Now that you get to see it in action, it makes sense. Rob, we're going to head into the next center stage session. I hope you and I can keep chatting out there from the show floor, but thanks for filling a moment or two here with me. We appreciate it. Our next center stage presentation is going to be a transition to assurance, experience, and insights. How do we build more digital resilience? We've got Chris Crocco, our Director of Observability Interlock with Splunk. We've got Matt Gillies, Cisco Fellow and Chief Architect, and then Stephen Moore, Solutions Architect and Distinguished Speaker here at Cisco. Digital resilience, crucial for preventing potential disruptions to our business operations, and that includes exposure to security threats, revenue loss, all based on performance issues. So, what are we going to hear? We're going to hear all the different ways that Cisco is combining networking and Splunk to allow our customers to integrate your infrastructures. We're going to head out to center stage right now. We'll see you on the other side. Here we go.
There we go.
Here we go.
So thanks everyone for sticking around for last sessions of the day. Really appreciate it. I'm joined by my colleagues today, Chris Crocco from the Splunk team, and the great Steve Moore from Technology Strategy. So I'm Matt Gillies, and today we're going to actually spend some time talking about this concept of digital resilience. And one of the things we want to leave you with today is that we've been talking a lot about digital resilience for security, or digital resilience for the application. And this is really more of a network-centric discussion, where we're actually going to show you some demos on how we make all of this come alive. So with that, I think what's important is let's settle and land on what is digital resilience. We know how dependent that we've all become on our digital infrastructure. So a simple way of explaining this is digital resilience is this ability for a business to continue to operate in the face of any disruption. This could be a cybersecurity attack. This could be application performance issues or network performance issues. Those kinds of things can impact our business itself and also the reputation of the business. And in order to achieve digital resilience, we have to obviously be able to identify the early signs of disruption, look at the actual data, and specifically we're going to show you how we do that for the network. Once we actually have that data, we have those insights, then it's about actually preventing or reducing impact. And lastly, we want to actually look at the end user experience, not just the network performance, or let's say the security performance, but what is actually the end user experience? I think one of the things that we've heard from customers is how do they connect the dots between what's happening with the application and the user down to the supporting infrastructure. Often this has actually required multiple tools, multiple knocks, a lot of finger pointing to actually figure out. So what we're going to show you today is how we actually bring that together in an integrated experience. So how you get started, the path to really digital resilience, it obviously depends on the customer maturity. So often for a lot of customers, it's actually getting that visibility. How do they get visibility into the overall infrastructure? And what we're going to show you today is stuff that's shipping today that allows us to bring data in from the network and provide that visibility. And the important thing here is how we do that with Splunk is not just for the Cisco portfolio, it's actually the data for the entire customer enterprise. This has been a long-standing problem that's been really difficult for customers to achieve. The next is once you have the data, how do you actually prioritize and figure out which events, for example, are the most important events, and how might those events be related to other events that we're seeing? The next is, we can start to look at things like proactive response, look for patterns in the data. What is this particular event related to this particular application, or do we see an increase in poor performance, as an example, over a period of time? So now you can actually look at the historical data. And lastly, kind of moving out is how do we optimize the user experience? If we can baseline what normal looks like, then we can actually start to take predictive, proactive recommendations and actually optimize the user experience knowing that we've deviated from normal. So Chris?
Yeah, so let's talk about how Splunk actually does this. And the first thing is data. One of the big differences with the Splunk platform is we can take any data from your environment, structured, unstructured, metrics, events, logs, traces, all of that can go into your Splunk environment, whether that's from your on-prem deployments, your cloud-based services, anything that's emitting data, we will accept it. Once we pull that into the core Splunk platform, we allow you to do a lot of analytics, a lot of insights, and a lot of action against that using schema on the fly, meaning that you index once and you can reuse that data for whatever use case you may have in whatever scenario may be coming up. We have powerful integrations with other tools and within our own portfolio, including the Cisco portfolio, that allow you to visualize that data, apply machine learning and AI, and apply insights across disparate data sets, meaning you can join your business service data with your technical service data and see what's causal and correlative between the two. On top of that is Splunk AI. Splunk has long been in the machine learning and AI ops space, and we're continuing to invest in that with AI assistance and AI insights to allow you to not only understand what's going on in your environment, but have better understanding of how to resolve those problems. And then we're applying these in purpose-built solutions for security and observability so that your teams are able to get to the exact data that they need in the exact format they need to solve the exact problems that they are chartered to solve. So let's talk a little bit about network-specific data. I was just mentioning that we take in all sorts of data, but we're at Cisco Live. This is a networking conference. Let's talk about network data. We can take in all of the different network sources that you may have going on in your environment. So traditional monitoring and alerting data from syslog and SNMP, including polling and traps. We can take in streaming data, including NetFlow and other push-based telemetry coming out of your environment. And if you are getting into cloud-native and microservice environments, we can pull in those high-fidelity metrics from gRPC and eBPF as well. The way that we collect this really depends on which of these data sources that we're talking about. So if you're pulling in syslog, SNMP, NetFlow, et cetera, we have what are called technical add-ons, or TAs you'll hear us refer to them as. And what this is doing is optimizing that data so that your timestamps, your line breaks, all of that sort of stuff looks consistent across that data type so that it's much more optimized for you to interact with once it's in the Splunk platform. If you're dealing with metric data or distributed trace data, very high fidelity, very voluminous data coming out of your environment, we support OpenTelemetry. Not only do we support OpenTelemetry, we're actually the #1 contributors to the open source project. And what this allows us to do is be very agnostic about how we're collecting that metric data, how we're collecting that distributed trace data, and collect it at full fidelity, so no sampling of your metrics or traces. And then if you have a push-based connection, so something like the Meraki API, you can push that directly into your Splunk environment without a collection mechanism, and we'll accept that as well. So collecting all of this data is really good, but what are you going to do with it? Once it's in Splunk, we allow you to do very high fidelity, very granular performance monitoring. So not just watching for things and waiting for them to break, but understanding the overall performance and helping you enhance that experience for your customers. Incident management, so when things do break, we help you find them faster and fix them faster, reducing your MTT everything. And then AI analytics and insights. I just mentioned that we have long been a player in the AI game. We're not just doing AI analytics anymore. We're also giving you AI insights to help you with guided troubleshooting, as well as guided postmortem and root cause analysis, so that you have an understanding of how to prevent this stuff from happening in the future. So I talked a little bit about different collection mechanisms, and a question we get a lot is, which one should I use? And there are really two guiding principles here for the two most common data collection types that we do, OpenTelemetry and technical add-ons. If you're doing high fidelity metrics, distributed tracing, or cloud native services, we recommend that you use OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry was purpose-built for these data types. It's optimized for, again, that very, very voluminous metric data that's coming out of your environment, and it gives you what we call the golden signals so that you know exactly what metrics that you're getting, regardless of where they're coming from. If you're pulling from a traditional data source or from a major vendor, not just Cisco, we recommend that you use technical add-ons. So technical add-ons are going to be really good for your things like syslog data, flat file data, SNMP data, where you need to optimize, you need to make sure that everything looks consistent. And the advantage of this is these technical add-ons are often managed by those teams that are producing the technology. So as you'll see in a little bit, we have Meraki, we have Catalyst, we have Thousand Eyes, and those teams are actually building their own technical add-ons for Splunk. And every time that they iterate their own product, they're going to be iterating their TA as well, which makes it easier for you to continue to collect the optimized data. Now, all of those actionability capabilities that I was talking about are going to be in what's called IT Service Intelligence, or ITSI. That's a premium app sitting on the core Splunk platform that allows you to get a lot of insights into your data about your technical services, your business services, how they interact with each other, as well as that optimized incident management experience. So instead of dealing with a laundry list of alerts, you're dealing with optimized episodes that represent a singular condition in your environment. It also allows you to apply that AI ops concept. So we're taking models that are aligned to your data types and applying them to your data and your services such that we're reducing that mean time to detect issues, mean time to respond to issues, and then proactively prevent those issues in the future. So let's talk about a couple of the scenarios that you can do today. The first thing that we've integrated with is Thousand Eyes. Now, Thousand Eyes has built OpenTelemetry into their agents. It's already available today. And what that allows you to do is anywhere that you have Thousand Eyes doing testing for your environment, whether that's on-prem in your data centers, your campus and branch environment, unowned networks like CSPs, you're able to use those agents to push via OpenTelemetry high-fidelity metrics about your environment into Splunk that you can then take and align with your application data, including application synthetics, for a full end-to-end visibility of your environment and the impacts that are taking place.
And this is our enterprise environment for the demo, where we have Meraki and Catalyst, wired and wireless switching, Thousand Eyes, and Splunk. And by bringing these solutions together and integrating them, and joining their data together, we have the ability to extend our visibility end-to-end into the networks and services that are impacting our application delivery and performance. Now, in this case, we're going to look at 3 distinct scenarios, all built around a business application, an employee portal, and show you how, with the extended visibility which we've gained, we can build that digital resilience.
All right, so we've told you a lot about ITSI. Let's see it in action. This is what we call a service tree. It's a logical grouping of your business and technical services. So we're aligning the business to the technical services in your environment. What we can see here is our authentication services seem fine, but we have problems going on in our applications and in our network. Network is red. That's the worst thing that we have going on. Let's see what's causing the problem. So if we follow that down into our Meraki service tree, I can see that wireless is where my problem is, and more specifically, my access points. Now, I'm pulling in high-level metrics from Meraki. I don't need everything, but I do need the things that are indicative of a problem. If I go to my failed requests, I can see that there's an individual access point that is my troublemaker. I've now gone from high-level impact to the specific event causing the problem. Now, if I click on that access point's name, we're going to go into what's called the entity view. And these are the metrics about that individual device, that data emitter that I need to know for its general health. So you can see connection time, current clients, all of the things that you might want to know at a top level about that actual device. The other thing that we can do in here is we have navigation suggestions. So this is telling me that I should probably go into the Meraki dashboard for additional troubleshooting. So let's go ahead and click on that and see what we can find out.
And here is our Meraki dashboard, more specifically, the assurance view. This is where we've gathered all of the health information throughout the Meraki organization, centralized it, analyzed it, and prioritized it. And as you can see here, we have an overall network and an organizational health score that's very high, but we do have some wireless clients that are impacted. More specifically, we can drill down further and see it's authentication related, and we have the identity of the users who are impacted. Now, if we switch into the alerts view, we can not only correlate the who, but the when this issue occurred on the environment, allowing us to correlate with service tickets or other events that could have been happening in the network. And finally, from the wireless health view, we can see that our network health is strong, but it's the network services that were impacted, further confirming that we have an authentication issue, and pointed out here specifically in this case with Radius. We have the who, the how, the what, the where, and the when, and now we can more quickly take action decisively and restore service.
Yeah, so this actually, what we've shown here, this data integration between Meraki and Splunk, this is actually something that we started shipping 3 days ago. So if you go to Splunk Base, which is kind of the app store for these data integrations, you'll find the new Meraki Splunk add-on that actually has the capabilities that we're showing on the left. You could also see some of the things that we're actually actively working on for a little later this year. So all of this data integration that we've shown, this correlation that's actually occurring, and the integration into ITSI, that's actually available today, as of 3 days ago.
Exciting stuff. So let's pop back into ITSI for a minute. We know what's going on in our network environment. We know that it's Meraki. Let's take a look at what's going on with our applications. We're pulling in our APM data. We can pull that from App Dynamics. We can also pull it from Splunk APM, which is what we're seeing here. Now, APM's showing us a problem. We've also correlated that with our employee portal. And if we follow that all the way down to our root cause, we can see it's the selections portal within that. And yep, APM and real user monitoring are both showing us a problem. What we can do now is go into what we call an episode, which again is that collection of individual alerts. So rather than going through that laundry list, we have this packaging of ML-assisted modeling that represents the singular condition taking place. Let's acknowledge that and go a layer deeper so that we can actually start solving this problem. So in the episode, we can see that, again, all of the alerts related to the employee portal are collected together. We can see the most impacted services. We have the view of the service tree that's being impacted. And we can go into the individual events and see what my root cause is. I don't need to work all of these alerts. I need to look at the first domino that fell and see if that will cause everything else to self-recover. I can go into those individual alerts and I can see where ITSI is suggesting that I go next. In this case, it's recommending that I go to Splunk Synthetics, which is application synthetics in your environment. So let's go ahead and click on that and see what synthetics are telling us. So we go into the employee portal, and I can look at the last day, the last couple of days, and again, these are application tests taking place. Very similar to Thousand Eyes, but specific to the application. Now, if I look at these tests, I can see that it's TCP problems that are consistently failing. That indicates it might be a network problem. So I go into real user monitoring. I can take a look at my front-end health and my back-end health. And again, I'm seeing my network errors spike. This is less of an application issue at this point, and now I get to point the finger at the network. We're going to pull those Thousand Eyes metrics in, again, using OpenTelemetry into Splunk's Observability Cloud. And this allows us to look at the exact tests that took place, as well as the exact alerts that came out of Thousand Eyes in the same place that I'm looking at the rest of my application data. From here, I can click into the individual test that popped this detector and go into Thousand Eyes to do further troubleshooting.
And in Thousand Eyes, we have the capability to correlate the impact of the network infrastructure, whether it's your network or a network that you traverse, with the user and application experience. Here, we're using a synthetic test in Thousand Eyes to pinpoint and measure the experience to the employee portal website. And we can see that during a certain window of time, we experience loss and latency, leading to longer page load times. Now, from the Path Insights view at the bottom of the screen, you can see where this impairment was introduced. With the new Traffic Insights, we can correlate the synthetic test measurements with the real flow data of what's traveling through this network device at the moment. We've turned those Thousand Eyes agents into NetFlow collectors, allowing us to make that correlation. We can focus in just on our application traffic or take a step back at a broader view and see that when our throughput to our employee portal went down, other services on the network increased their consumption, leading to the oversubscription and the issues. Now, what will be coming very soon in the Traffic Insights view is the Sankey chart. A quick, easy way to see the proportional impact that a network or a network service contributes to the overall consumption of the environment and the availability.
All right, so we had one more thing happening in our service tree in ITSI. So if we go back through our network, we can see that Catalyst wasn't as degraded, but it is having a service problem. And if I look at my environment, Wired seems to be having the most impact, but I also have access points that may not be causing a wider service problem, but are still having trouble. What this tells me is I have multiple locations within my Catalyst deployment that I need to take a look at. The advantage of this is I have it in Splunk. So instead of swivel sharing between ICE, Catalyst Center, SD-WAN in individual tools, I can now go into my Catalyst app in Splunk and look at all of this in one place. So let's go ahead and do that.
And as Chris mentioned, this is still inside of Splunk, and it's our unified onboarding of all the Cisco enterprise networking data and insights, pulling from Catalyst Center, Catalyst SD-WAN, Identity Services Engine, and very soon to include IoT devices from CyberVision and further details from ThousandEyes. And in this overview, what we have is all of the security and network alerts that have been brought together and centralized, giving you a quick view of the current issues and exposure in your environment. We've got authentication issues and all the health scores from the network devices and services. Now, in this particular scenario, we have a user who has reported an issue reaching that employee portal website. They can get there with their mobile, but not with their laptop. Let's go explore and see how we can figure out what's going wrong and how we can restore service. We'll start with the devices view, and this is where the endpoint information, all of the endpoints that the network has observed, have been brought together for you so you can quickly see who and what the network is aware of. And we found that our impacted users, mobile and laptop, are both known and seen on the network, and more specifically, they're connected through the same wireless controller. So let's look at the network insights view and see if that might be causing our problem. And here in the network insights view, we have the health scores and attributes of all the network infrastructure devices in the environment. In this case, our wireless controller has a health score of 10, which is perfect, giving us an indication this is not the cause of our problem. Further down, we have listed by type and degree other network events that were noteworthy. Things like BGP state change or access point issues in the environment. Well, it's not here, so let's look at the security insights view and see if that might give us an indication of what's going wrong. Now this view starts with an overall threat matrix and grid of all the different types of security-related issues in the environment, whether it's malware, whether it's IPS events, or other types of threats. You have an idea of what currently you're at risk of in your environment. Now here is our user's laptop noticed under the drop firewall flows. And it's seen that the policy has quarantined it. So when they brought their laptop in that day from home, it didn't pass the posture check. And now we know what's happening, why they can get there with their mobile, but not with their laptop. We can take the steps to remediate whatever is wrong, to bring it up to the network and environment standards, restore service, and get them back in business. What's important here is that, as Chris mentioned earlier, we brought all this data together once into Splunk. But whether it's the security team, the network team, the application team, they all have the same view, which means that they're all working from the same information. They can work together more efficiently and more quickly to identify, remediate, and restore services.
Yeah, I think, Steve, what we just showed here in the second demo, we actually started shipping that TA for Catalyst Center, for Catalyst SD-WAN, and for ICE last fall. So again, totally real, and I should have pointed this out earlier. Everything we've shown, we actually built out in the lab. So there's no movie magic here. We've actually got this entire thing working just to kind of prove out this particular use case. And I would say the other really key point here is, to belabor what Steve said, we're ingesting the data once from these different places. Data coming from ICE, data coming from Catalyst Center, but that data is being ingested with context. So we know how it's related to a user or the other services. And that's really the important point, is the context for that data. And this avoids kind of us having to leverage multiple different tools and kind of pivoting between different tools and the finger pointing that has historically gone on. We've tried to actually fix this kind of problem in the past.
The other thing I want to point out with that was NetFlow data, that was syslog data, and that was REST data, all in one place. So that's not something that you've been able to do in the Cisco portfolio before. You have all of these different data types that are now unified, right? That's the big thing to take away, is it's not just data from different controllers, it's data from different data types that are now optimized in one place.
Great. So yeah, I think what we've shown here is, by looking at kind of how we bring data together for digital resilience, now we can actually achieve what every customer has asked for a long time, is how do we correlate what's happening with the business to the supporting infrastructure. And I would say the second part is really how we can actually measure the user experience. So it's not just about the network and the routers particular, it's actually looking at it from a user experience perspective. What's the page load time from the browser for that user that's actually accessing the application? So there's another level of sophistication and granularity we can do when we actually synthesize and bring all of that data together. So digital resilience, this outcome that we really think is valuable for customers, is achieved only when we bring together all of that data for the network, for security, and for application observability. So with that, I think we finished a little early, but thanks very much for everyone attending. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. Welcome back to the Cisco TV broadcast studio. We're so glad to have you with us live in real time, coming to you from the beautiful Rai in Amsterdam in the world of solutions. So glad we've had you with us. This is our final segment of Wednesday. Unbelievable. We have so much coming at you tomorrow. We just finished up another great center stage session, Transition to Assurance, Experience, and Insight, Building Digital Resilience. A couple of minutes from now, we are going to go back out to center stage for an exclusive behind-the-scenes follow-up with Matt Gillies, Cisco Fellow Chief Architect, but I'm on set right now with Rob Boyd.
Hello.
I'm going to hop back over here for you.
How's it going?
Just for a moment. And now I'm going to hop right back over here.
Yeah, keep
where
your
I belong.
space. Keep your
Yeah,
space.
I know. Well, I've got to be over here, otherwise people don't really know what to do with me. All right, so Rob, we just heard about the importance of digital resilience to prevent disruptions and security threats and revenue losses, right? We saw that this powerful 1-2 punch of Cisco networking and Splunk combining to let our customers integrate their infrastructures. What's cool is this is the first Cisco Live EMEA where Splunk is out there front and center as part of the Cisco ecosystem. And again, because I'm stuck back here, what have you been hearing out on the show floor about Splunk? Are people excited about it? Do they get what Splunk has brought to Cisco?
Oh, yeah. Especially because when you're talking about this degree of visibility across this many different domains, and I think what's really sunk in is the necessity for having this level of observability across, as we say, full stack, but across the entire stack. Because that's the only way you have any hope of knowing, well, what's happening here? My ground is shifting underneath me so fast. The nice thing is, what struck me as I was thinking, you know, Splunk, not just in name, but just in terms of presence, whether it's named or not, has a presence as much as it seems like AI does in terms of just in every booth. But, you know, Splunk was also such a good friend of Cisco's for so many years and so many customers that, as we talked about last year, this felt like a foregone conclusion, why didn't this already happen?
It was underway.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were here last year together, it was already underway. We just hadn't completed necessarily. But yeah, right. The conversation's been going on for quite a while. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, you can cut anything off. I think what's interesting though is also the culture match, and that was always something that fascinated me about. You know, the very good acquisitions, when you look across Cisco, and we have been doing a little bit of history, you know, looking over and celebrating the last 40 years. Struck me that SNL is celebrating 50 years at the same time. We're celebrating 40 years, a little different audience.
Slightly different
A
audience.
little more entertaining maybe in some ways.
You mean us?
Yes, I'm talking about us. Us in terms of 40 years of Cisco. I forgot where I was leading with that, but either way, the idea that we run to things that we understand when things feel a little bit loose, perhaps. And I feel like Splunk does provide a degree of confidence. They've got a great culture match. The people have integrated well from everything I can tell. And we're seeing that across the entire portfolio, really.
Power of partnerships turn into a stronger edge-to-edge portfolio for us here at Cisco, right?
I like that.
When we look around and we see, it's not even where our gaps are. We're smart enough to know what we haven't quite figured out on our own yet. And because we rely so deeply on partnerships and we know that we're not an island, we see a partner that we know is going to bring exceptional value to our customers, and our thought is we've got to create an even deeper level of partnership. And I really do think that's where Splunk came from. On the data side, we've done a lot of things. We haven't always been a data power company, but now we are.
Well, I mean, we've always been about moving the data as well, and I think that's really the focus. Of course, we've got UCS, and you've got a lot of different things happening now with these understanding that when it comes to workloads, your AI kind of workload is going to be completely different from your general purpose workload, and that's having a ripple effect across data center infrastructure, architecture, because you combine that on the enterprise side with the fact that customers are struggling with, hey, we want you to come back in from from home and come back into the office, and it may be a little bit, maybe a lot. Either way, no one can predict what type of facilities do we need to have. The only thing we can predict there is that they better be good facilities or they're going to go back home.
Love that. Love that. It looks like Alpa is back out in center stage right now. Do you have Matt with you, Alpa?
I do indeed, and I had to literally run here to find Matt because it's a privilege to talk to you, Matt. Would you like to just introduce yourself, your title, which I find very impressive?
Well, great. Thank you. It's great to be here and talking to you at Cisco Live.
Yeah.
My name is Matt Gillies. I'm a Cisco Fellow and the Chief Architect for the Global Solutions Engineering team.
Thank you, Matt. So please, could you tell us what is digital resilience and why are so many organizations moving towards it?
Yeah, great question. I think if we step back, what is digital resilience? Digital resilience is really this ability for a business to continue to operate despite any disruption. So if we think about in our own lives how dependent we are on digital infrastructure, any sort of disruption really causes, financial risk or reputational risk to our customers. And so digital resilience is, even in the face of a cybersecurity attack or an application issue or a network performance issue, how can we ensure that the business continues to run optimally? That's in a nutshell what it is.
Yes, and Jitu mentioned that as well, right? Digital resilience is business resilience.
That's right.
I've heard the terms assurance and resilience, and they sound somewhat similar, but can you explain to us the relationship, please?
Yeah, so when we talk about assurance and specifically network assurance, that's this requirement for us to actually understand the network performance. And we want to be able to do that from multiple vantage points. And some of the investments that we've been making is how we use ThousandEyes, for example, and embed this ability to measure the user experience from multiple vantage points. So the more places we can measure the user experience, the easier it is for actually to pinpoint where a problem might be. So we can measure the digital experience from, the network infrastructure, from the cloud infrastructure, that we depend on, but we actually don't own ourselves, or measure it from like the service provider network or even the mobile handset. So putting more vantage points and then be able to use digital experience monitoring to measure that experience from everywhere, that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about network assurance.
Yeah, it's amazing that we can get these insights and what it can do and how much it can help a business.
You bet.
So talking about that, what can our customers do today to stay ready and take that step towards digital resilience?
Yeah, everyone is really in a different place, and we've kind of set up multiple paths for our customers to think about how they can achieve digital resilience. It first starts with visibility. You need the data. You need to actually understand, what's happening in your infrastructure. So examining those applications that are really important to your business and then figuring out, am I instrumented the right way? Do I have the data for the necessary applications? And so we've been really investing in how we provide rich data from our entire portfolio together with the entire customer enterprise. And I think the value of what we're doing with digital resilience and Splunk is that we can do that not just for the Cisco portfolio, but also for the entire customer ecosystem. And that's why customers find this really exciting, is they're now really to drive digital experience because they've got that visibility they never had before. So where they start kind of depends on where they are. As soon as you get the data, and then it's, you can start to look for patterns in the data. What is normal? What was normal last week and what's actually happening today? So you can start to look for those patterns, and then you can start to make these predictive recommendations and say, well, I know that the performance should be X, but now it's Y. What should we do? And so now we start getting into the predictive, kind of the more using AI and machine learning, for example, to really start optimizing the user experience and doing it again across the entire enterprise. So I think that's the exciting, there's many different places where customers can start, but that's why they're really motivated and excited about this income and really, outcome. And really it's, I would say, a requirement today.
Yeah.
It's a boardroom level discussion on how they drive digital resilience across their entire enterprise.
Absolutely, and staying that step ahead to go beyond, right?
You bet.
So talking about go beyond, Matt, I'd love to hear from you. What's been one of your highlights at Cisco Live so far?
The great thing about Cisco Live is it's really about connecting with people. There's amazing innovation. Everyone's really motivated. Everyone's really interested to learn. Certainly this year, more than ever, it's about AI. Everyone's trying to understand AI. Some, are further ahead and are really adopting AI. But connecting with people and great customers and partners, I think that's the best best thing about having these in-person events.
Amazing. And do you have any final words to our viewers that you'd like to share?
Well, I'm just, we'd love to work further on driving digital resilience with our customers and partners, and the time to start is now.
Absolutely.
We've never had a greater need than right now. So definitely encourage all our customers and partners to collaborate closely and drive that outcome.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matt. You heard it right here, Steve. I'm throwing it back to you.
Thank you, Alpa. The time to start is now. Alpa has done such a fantastic job for us all week long. She's brilliant. She's the newest member of our broadcast team. Very, very proud of you, my friend. So have a great night. I'll be looking forward to seeing you in the morning. Time to start is now. We are going to kind of roll into the conclusion of this last segment by talking about the highlights of each of our days and really what we think stood out. We're going to look at a video in just a moment, but before we go to that, I wanted to ask you, you've done so many fantastic interviews today. Which interview would you wish we would have had maybe an entire half-hour segment to be able to do? Which one do you think we could have gone even deeper on?
Interesting. So a half-hour segment is your definition of me going longer?
Yeah.
To me, that's a starting point.
All right, which one could be an hour-long segment, Rob?
Or more. You know what I really enjoyed? We had a customer here that's kind of, because I had to keep clarifying with them. I said, are you a customer, you're a partner? It's Cluster Power. One word, Cluster Power. Okay. And I think they're out of Romania. And they've built their own data center, but they're talking about like AI native data centers, which encompasses a lot of things that we fail to think about when it comes to the fact that we could spend a lot of money making really beautiful data centers for general purpose workloads. You and I have been up here talking for years now about kind of highlighting the latest in cloud, the latest in multi-tenant type of facilities and setups. And all that is still needed, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh, this has a different power draw, different data density, and different physical constraints that we're now running up against in terms of, well, how do we house these things? Because it's one thing to say, okay, I've now got new UCS server that has 8 H100 GPUs from NVIDIA in there. Well, that's going to have a whole different, layout when it comes to power that you've got to get to. How do you get, if it's air cooled, or now some of these we're getting to that point where it's got to be liquid cooled. The sustainability zone, it feels like a lot of things are coming together in the data center space for that, and I think it's exciting as we talk about how do we move that data around at speed when we talk about those possible choke points. I like what Cluster Power is doing. I wanted to talk to him a lot more. He's using UCS, he's using Nexus and the Fabric and the dashboards. He's using all of that, but they're also using it to make better quality data centers that support the type of things that need to happen now and help us achieve and answer these intractable questions around sustainability when it comes to this stuff.
Love that, love that. We heard about energy in the opening keynote as well. So many highlights over the past couple of days. Let's check out a video together on a couple of those highlights. Watch this with us. We'll see you back in about a minute and a half.
Welcome to Cisco Live.
I think the entire show has been a gigantic highlight, but it's great to see some of those moments. Before we sign off, I'm going to very quickly in seconds go back out to RF, where I've got Alpa and Cedric out there. My friends, you've been amazing today. Any last things? You've got 8 seconds. Make it quick. What do you got?
It's been brilliant. Love the energy.
You were amazing too, Steve.
All right. Well, that was actually less than 8 seconds. You guys are amazing.
We can do a trick if you want.
Adore you.
Wait, we have a trick.
We'll save the tricks for tomorrow. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, do a quick trick. You've got 5 seconds.
Cool.
1, 2, 3.
Oh. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Everybody, you're so glad, stay with me. So glad to have you on the broadcast. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a great night on behalf of Alpa, Cedric, Rob, and myself. Good night, everybody. Well, hello, Cisco Nation. Good morning to all of you from the RAI in Amsterdam. We are coming to you live here in the Cisco TV broadcast studio from Cisco Live 2025 Amsterdam. It is so great to have all of you with us. Thank you for joining from wherever it is that you happen to be, whether it's at work or at home or anywhere and everywhere around the world that you are tuning in. I'm Steve Moulter, and I am joined this morning here in the studio right away by another one of my excellent co-hosts, Alpa Tankaria. Good morning,
Steve.
Alpa.
Good morning. We're back. Day 2. Yes.
Our back day 2. I'm going to say this right out of the gate at the top of day 2. You are spectacular. You jumped in with our